Yeah. When do they open? When they're ready. Mhm. When's that? Oh, wow.
Yes, I did. I just replied to. It's okay. We'll get something figured out. Thanks.
Yeah, that's. I did the introduction on myself. Feel free to throw anything in you want. I don't think I need to tell you that.
Short, quick highlight.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Monday, August 17th, 2020. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
Flag.
and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right. Roll call, please.
Albertson,
Here.
Bueller,
Here.
Hoyer,
Here.
Pauline, Lallam,
Here.
Manti,
Here.
Rademski,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Vilhauer,
Here.
Y.
Present.
Okay, and did we have Pauline?
I see him. He's coming now.
Okay.
Councilman Helene
Thank
just
you.
arrived. All right. Thank you. The first item on the agenda here for approval is the approval of the consent agenda, and I would like to point out that I added an agenda or an item at the end of the consent, which was the appointment of Donis Roberts as a member of the Watertown Housing Authority Board. And so that was kind of a late entry. In case you printed your agenda already, I put that on today, so that's actually on the consent agenda.
Mayor, who's done this replacing? Did someone resign?
Somebody resigned, yeah. I'm not sure which one it was. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Have a motion by Bueller and a second by Hoyer. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public comment period, and we do have a room full. This is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. So please state your name into the microphone for the record before making your comment. And if your comment is related to an agenda item, please wait until that agenda item is taken up by the council. And I think there are probably multiple issues. Would you please raise your hand if you're here about 10th Avenue North? Just one? Okay. We'll start with that then, sir, if you wouldn't mind. Please state your name into the microphone for the record.
Hi, my name is Christian Westlow, resident of Watertown for 11 years now, so I guess I'm a rookie by some standards. We live at 55 10th Avenue Northwest. I know the board is now, I know the council is now aware of the concerns. I know we've shared with the city concerns about the plan to widen 10th. I appreciate so many of the responses. I reached out to many of you via email. By the way, our Watertown website is pretty fantastic. If you're looking for something, it's out there. And it's really easy to have access to you guys, so thank you for that. That's really cool. I appreciate the responses. I really wanted to come here tonight more than anything to express my concern over the parking side, or the sidewalk side. I know the widening of 10th Avenue is being discussed because there's a lot of concern about whether or not we really need it. There isn't, that I've been able to find so far, any evidence that supports us adding a turn lane, because I'm not aware of any evidence that says that we've got clogged traffic there. And the parking on the south side only seems to be required if we add a turn lane and widen things that much. So I think the general feel, and I don't mean to speak for anybody else who lives on 10th Avenue, but the general feel is fix the road, absolutely, it needs it, but don't widen it. The part that I really wanted to speak to you about is the sidewalk piece. And first off, Mr. Vilhauer, I owe you an apology. I assumed that it was Mr. Vilhauer because I relied on my memory, and I should know better than to think that that's any good anymore. So, Mr. Roby, you got off easy. I didn't assign blame, ownership, accountability to you, and I did to poor Mr. Vilhauer. So, thank you. And now you can be mad at me. So that's good. My concern with it is we have a city ordinance. Our house was built in 1911, and my wife and I walk around town a lot with our dog. And I just thought this weekend for fun I'd go doing a little more driving. And all neighborhoods of all different kinds with houses of all different price ranges and values, there's no consistency in when and where we have sidewalks in this town. So I like being the first at things, but I don't really want to be the first group that we hold feet to the fire to have to pay for sidewalk replacement in a city that obviously for decades and decades and decades has not held anyone's feet to the fire when it comes to that ordinance. It's very hit and miss. It's $400,000 houses and it's $30,000 houses. So my question for the city is, if that ordinance isn't pertinent, if we're not going to hold people accountable to it, then that's your job to bring it either to a vote or to make that decision yourself to either do away with it or to get real serious. And by serious, I mean not just start with us and say, yeah, you guys got to pay for yours, but put together a plan that says everybody in town is going to have to comply by such and such. Again, I don't mean to pass the cost off to everybody else, but I don't know that I want to be the first in this instance. So that's really all I had for comment on that. I can step away and more important things can be talked about.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
all.
Westlow. All right, and I think that there are still probably are multiple items that people want to speak about, but I'm just going to let you come up and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And if you're repeating what someone else said, maybe just say that it's already been stated and you're in support or against or whatever. If you want to speak now, or if you want to wait until the agenda item comes up, you can do that as well. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? If so, please come forward and state your name to the microphone.
Hello, council. Can you hear me on that one? Okay. My kid, who is more techie than me, tells me wrong one, Mom. My name is Amy Rambo. I was born and raised here. Moved away, but knew that this is where I wanted to raise my children. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a very emotional person. I am the mother of a gay child. I am also the president of Watertown Love. If you're not familiar with the group, we're a local nonprofit that started in April of 2019. We offer love and support to the LGBTQ members of the community. We are LGBTQ youth, adults, and their allies. We host Pride in the Park, which was held last June, and is slated to happen again this September, COVID bearing on that. We also participate in local activities that offer a sense of community, the last being 14 weeks of food boxes with Watertown Community Cares. The group began with the loss of a young person in our community. We knew we needed to foster more love and acceptance within our community, and this group was a first step in creating that community. Since then, I have watched the city grow leaps and bounds. I have also seen it falter. We are a diverse community, a beautifully diverse community. Small things create big changes. Sorry. Amending wording to include items like gender identity and sexual orientation to the city ordinance is a simple way to show inclusion of all that live in our community. Celebrate those who surround you and make Watertown what it truly is. Imagine having your city recognize that you are part of it. Imagine we are all on a level playing field when it comes to employment and housing. LGBTQ plus individuals are your friends, your neighbors, and your coworkers. They are on your bowling league. They help you with community fundraisers. They are Watertown. We are all Watertown. Passing this non-discrimination ordinance would show Watertown is ready to step forward and lead the way. We are not a community stuck in the past or filled with hate. We are a vibrant and growing community. Most of all, we are a community that cares about one another. I love living in Watertown. This is my home. It is everyone's home, no matter who you are. Please help us show the others in this community by passing these policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, step forward and state your name into the record, please.
Deborah Griffith. I'm here discussing the same as Amy. This is pretty personal for me, so excuse me. She's talking about the need to belong, the need to feel like you belong, that you're included. And I spent most of my childhood never feeling that. Always feeling like you're the oddball, you're the odd person out. You know, what's wrong with me? Just constantly, what is wrong with me? And you know, those early formative years where you're kind of learning new things. Am I an alien? And I never got it. And it didn't really matter where I lived before, but moving to the Midwest, it started to matter. And I got called every name you can think of. And I wish I could say that goes away. It doesn't, because it still happens. And that's not okay. And she mentioned we lost somebody last year to this. They're not the last. They're not the first, and it does not need to continue. I finally figured out who I was. This part of me, just a year ago. I'm 40. This isn't something new. It's just I finally get it. There's not something wrong with me. I am who I am for a reason. And I can accept that. I've been accepted by others because of her. And knowing that I'm not alone, it means everything. For a long time, I had to worry about job security because of it. Am I going to lose my job because people find out? Because I look different, or I talk different, or I appear different. That's not what we're about. That's not what the community that I first got here embraced. It was differences, that we're all different, that my gender identity or somebody else's sexuality does not determine whether or not they're a good employee or whether or not they're a good citizen in our city. Diversity is a strength. Maintain your diversity, you improve your strength. We want more businesses to come here. We want Watertown to grow. We want it to stay strong. If we don't include others, we're not going to obtain that. You are not going to continue to grow Watertown merely on Watertown residents alone. We have to show others that we're welcoming. Please come in my business and shop here. You know, we care about you. We want you here. I've been here for 14 years now, and this is the first year I've really felt that I belong here. And it's partially her, and it's partially I have an awesome employer now. So when you think about things like this isn't an agenda. This isn't a slippery slope. This is about the difference between being accepted and being appreciated for the skills that I have, that they have, that we all have. And I know I'm a bit intense. I'm really passionate about this because this is the first time I'm up here having to defend myself, to explain myself to others, that I belong here, that I have something incredible to contribute to this community. And so does everybody else. And their gender or their sexuality or what they look like, what their hair is like, that doesn't create it. Us appreciating those differences, us being able to have an open mind, that shows our strength. That shows our welcomeness. And that's what takes us beyond other communities here. We have to compete with them. You want to compete? You want us to grow? You want us to keep our economy or even improve it? Take the lead. Really consider this. I have this wonderful thing written out. I don't think you can say it. I don't think you can put into words how important this is. Because I don't want to see anybody else lost because they don't feel accepted. That's not what we're about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward and speak?
Hello, I'm Alex Rambo, and I am the youth ambassador of Watertown Love and a sophomore of Watertown High. I have lived here most of my life. I was born here, and just seeing these amazing changes hopefully coming to Watertown will help. It destroyed me when my friend Mari did pass away last year, and I feel like we aren't protected. I am a proud transgender bisexual male, but yet I feel like I cannot be proud within our community with its discrimination, and I would love to see us be able to change and accept people. I know the people of Watertown are good and that we can change for the better. And just knowing I can be protected as who I am and as a child. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hello, everyone, again. I just wanted to address some things that I know have been going around. And first of all, I know throughout this entire process, some things have come quickly. And that wasn't, to pull a trick on you guys or pull a fast one over you. We just genuinely didn't know there would be this much pushback on an anti-discrimination ordinance or a bullying prevention policy. And so I know there is some trust that we have to gain back because of that. And I have been willing to put in the work and want to put in the work to gain that trust from all of you.
Brett, would you say your name, please?
Brett Reese, sorry.
Thank you.
That's why we've taken over a month to really look at this ordinance, and why at this rate we're going to be taking another month to look over it as well, to make sure that what we propose is good. And despite what others may be saying, there is no secret agenda here. We're not trying to take rights away from anyone or, going on this long path to, hurt anyone. Adam, Josh, Mayor Karen, you were with us at the march on June 12th. We are not a hateful group. We are not an ill-intentioned group. We are a group of love and acceptance, and we just simply want to be protected as citizens in this community. And I think, they touched upon it really well, but we need to remember the reality of the situation in our town. As I mentioned last year, a young LGBTQ member of our community passed away, unfortunately. As recently as last year, a young LGBTQ member in our community was unwillingly added to an online group chat in which they were told was a group of F-word hating mother effers, and that they were told that God hates F-word. There is an issue here. Whether you see it firsthand or not, there is. And I need you all to trust your LGBTQ members and fellow citizens, because we are the ones that experience it and we know where it is. And that's why we need an anti-bullying policy. And there are some people saying that current laws are enough. But as I reminded the committee last week on Tuesday, in the status quo, I could go apply for an apartment here in Watertown, and that renting agent could tell me no because of my sexual orientation. That wouldn't violate city ordinance, it wouldn't violate state law, and it wouldn't violate federal law. I could go to a coffee shop and try to order a coffee, and they could reject me based on my sexual orientation. Wouldn't violate a city ordinance, wouldn't violate a state law, wouldn't violate a federal law. There are no current laws in place that do what this non-discrimination ordinance would do, other than a federal Supreme Court decision that protects us from employment. If you think that it would be wrong for me to be denied those things based on my sexual orientation, then please pass this non-discrimination ordinance so we can ensure that it does not happen. Remember, all this ordinance asks and requires people to do is to not discriminate. And if they would really have that hard of a time not discriminating, that's exactly why we need this ordinance to begin with then. We're not placing a huge burden on people. And for those concerned about religious liberties, we place an exception in the ordinance for religious organizations in the city ordinance. I'm trying to meet with you all and earn your trust. I want you to really hear me, and I want you to know that I have no ill intentions or secret agenda against anyone. But more importantly, I want you to help me. Do any of you know what it's like to have to fight for your right to not be denied housing? Or what it feels like to have to fight for your right to not be denied services that others get to enjoy? To have to fight to get a bullying prevention policy passed because people in your community harass you and target you because of a part of you? You've heard that that's the case in this town. I don't want us to wait until another life is lost or somebody else is harmed. We can take preventative measures now, and in a way that isn't harming anyone, not a soul. I am fighting hard for my community here, so please allow me to serve as the LGBTQ liaison to the mayor's office and for Officer Johnson to serve as the liaison to the Watertown Police Department. We're people that would have no legal authority and wouldn't take a penny from the city. All we would be doing is just trying to increase access and awareness for acceptance in our community and give those people that have felt like they don't have a voice in our government. And please consider passing the non-discrimination ordinance as well. Our current laws are not enough, and we deserve protection. Protection that only the government, which is all of you, can give us, not any private organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hello, my name is Mike Loy. I am 43. I've lived in this town for 23 years. I guess I haven't always been an ally to the LGBTQ community. I grew up, in the 90s, graduating in the 90s, and it wasn't really talked about, and it was a back burner issue. And what changed my mind to finally become an ally is my niece, who is a 4.0 student from Sioux Falls. She came out as bisexual, and shortly thereafter she tried to hurt herself. And this is a kid that, I love dearly, and it's not just, a bunch of, derogatory terms like freaks and weirdos and stuff like that. It's everybody. And there's, I guarantee every one of you knows somebody who is afraid to tell you how they actually feel and how they identify. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. This is not anything new. The fact that people are finally talking about it is a gift, and it's long overdue. I understand that the majority of religious organizations say that this is not okay and that it's wrong. But those same religious organizations also tell us to treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you wouldn't want to be treated the way some of these people are being treated, then I just beg you to search your heart. Think about the golden rule. Think about these kids that just want to be, they just want to feel normal and not less than. You don't even have to say words to these kids. I guarantee you they get looks, you know, they get scoffed at. It's really a shame. And the fact that, you know, so many places don't have basic protections, like step one, basic protections is ridiculous. And, you know, I'm a heterosexual man, wife, 3 kids. I adopted a baby from the state of South Dakota. I mean, I've tried to raise my kids, you know, the right way, and I will not teach my kids to hate any other people for any reason at all. And I know a lot of people say I don't hate them, they need to change, there's something wrong with them, they need to pray the gay away, they need to do this and that. It's all baloney. You don't need a book to tell you how to treat a person standing in front of you. They are human. They have the same emotions as you and I. It's time to leave them alone, and it's time to be a little less horrible to people. Yeah, that's what this world needs so much right now. There's so much horrible talk everywhere, and it's going to come to a head. It really is. And the people that are pushing it are going to be the ones to blame. And it's time for certain towns. I know Brookings has protections. Maybe we can catch up to Brookings someday. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. Thank you for allowing me a little bit of a space in your busy day to talk a little bit about discrimination. I don't know if any of you have read my article. I did write an article in the public opinion about my experiences growing up in South Dakota. I have been in Watertown now for 7 years, and initially, my name is Stephanie Traversy. I'm a clinical coordinator at the Human Service Agency. My apologies. I just wanted to touch briefly on the fact that when I was running for school board and when I was doing a lot of other things that I've talked about, I never really identified Watertown as a home. I was raised in Mitchell. I went to school in Mitchell. I went to college in Mitchell. But what I want you to know is that this is a really great community. It's a viable community. And I know that in 7 years, it might not be realistic that somebody like me could come in and make these kinds of decisions or judgments about you. But this community does support children. I've seen it, and I know that a lot of you probably have a hand in that, and so I thank you for that. What I really want you to know is that I work with children, and I work with adolescents, I work with families, and I've had a lot of children and families come to me and talk about discrimination, talk about being bullied, and one of the things that we know is that kids will make decisions about ending that pain, and they have. And that's not going to stop. Kids are desperate for help, and you are elected officials. You have that power. And one of the things that, regardless of how you feel personally, the one thing that's a common denominator is economic viability. And when we look at the ACE study, which is a study that was conducted years ago about adverse childhood experiences, kids get sick when they have been bullied and have multiple experiences. This isn't just about trauma that is domestic violence or child abuse. It can be inclusive, and bullying is one of them. It's any kind of a trauma that's repeated over time. And our country as a whole, we spend $3 trillion on cancer treatment, heart disease, and those are things that happen as a result of constant trauma experiences. And so I just want to thank you, because I know that the work that you do isn't always easy, and the decisions that you have to make isn't always easy, but you can make a difference because you are the adults. You get to say that this is an opportunity where you get to show kids that it isn't okay. And I'd like you to really think about that. It's important, because if this community has grown on me in 7 years, think about what you can make this in 20, 50, and your names will be here. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then. We'll move on. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I would like to move item M up to the top, because I know there's someone waiting for that, and hopefully still online. With that change, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Bueller. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. All right, we'll start with item M, which is authorization for the mayor to sign a master agreement with TSP Inc. for occasional project management and permit application review services. And I will just tell you a little bit about this. TSP is a local architectural and engineering firm, and we have a need right now because we're shorthanded in the engineering and community development divisions. So this would be on-call work to do things that once we're fully staffed and rolling, we won't need anymore. So it's a temporary thing. Since it's a contract, the council needs to authorize me to sign it. But right away, I know we need the roof to be replaced on the Boys and Girls Club. Just don't have any engineers that have time to address that right now. So that'll be the first project that we do. And we also might utilize TSP's architectural services to help us with permit review while we're getting back staffed up. So with that, I'll see if anyone has any questions or comments about it. Councilman Lallam?
Is there a cap on this agreement at all, or is there a dollar amount that we're putting directly towards it?
No, but I don't
just an
expect that
hourly-
yes, it's an hourly rate, and, you know, as we staff up, there'll be less of a need for it. It's about a year.
Is it a budgeted item that we've looked at?
No, it's not. And we don't actually need to have a contract to do these things. Most of these projects are really small dollar amounts, but they wanted to do it on a contract basis so that the fees are agreed
Okay.
up front. So,
Sounds good.
any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item A is presentation by the Watertown Police Department on the 2020 SWOT analysis. And I see we have Assistant Chief Toomey and we have Sergeant Rehorse.
Madam Mayor and Council, thank you for taking the time. I know you guys are busy, so we're going to make this as quick as possible. And we're just going to hit the highlights of our SWOT analysis. It's Captain Rehorse.
Oh, so I'm sorry.
You demoted him, so saved us a little money in our budget this year. So Steve's going to give you an introduction and explain what a SWOT analysis is for the people out in the public that might not know, and we'll do a brief highlight. So thank you.
All right, so starting back in February and March of this year, we got together with about 20 sworn police officers and 6 civilians, and we did what is our 6th SWOT analysis in the last 14 years. And if you're not familiar with that, what a SWOT analysis is, it's where we look at what our internal strengths and weaknesses and our external opportunities and threats. And we look at that and we try and develop a plan moving forward. And they're broken down into a couple different areas. The internal areas that we look at, as you can see up there, are the structural frame of reference, human resources, technology, cultural, and political. And then we look externally to what are our opportunity and threats. And those are the areas that we look at. And if you want to skip.
Pete, is that being shared to the Teams folks, or can't it be? Sorry to interrupt there.
Skip ahead.
So much pressure.
One more. All right, so there we go. So basically what this is, it ends up being a roadmap. It's going to help us figure out where we're at right now and where we're going in the future. Without something like this, we really wouldn't know where we're going, and we might knee-jerk a lot of the decisions that we make going forward into the future. This gives us a clear and progressive plan to what's important to us going forward. And so, like I said, there were 20 officers, 6 civilian employees. We all got together multiple times, and we drew out this roadmap to where we want to end up. and it kind of gives us a strategic plan moving forward. It was actually kind of fun looking over. I looked at some of the old ones we've done, the other 5 ones in the past, and as you look at those old ones, we really saw that we achieved a lot of our weaknesses we fixed, and we made better, and it's just fun to see how we fix the things we need to fix and work on what needs working there. So we'll look at the first frame of reference here, which is a structural frame of reference. And as you can see on here, this is how we accomplish our mission. It looks at things such as our goals, chain of command, and then also our facility, equipment, and work environment. So these are the things we're looking at there. And if you look at what we decided our strengths were in this, we looked at our mission statement, vision statement, and core values. And every SWOT analysis, we review these. And the neat thing about our mission statement, vision statement, core values, these were created by officers at the Watertown Police Department. We created this, we sat down years ago, and we've changed them somewhat throughout the years to meet our needs. And we left it pretty much alone this time, changing just one small item. And so we looked at that, and it's really neat because all of our officers, they truly believe, and that's their beliefs and their values, and we embody what our statements are there. So we looked at that, and we decided that that was good. The next thing we looked at were facility, vehicles, and equipment in our facility. We thought was a great strength. We have a great community room that we use for training ourselves, as well as members of the community can come and use that as well. We have a garage, which is super important now that we have all the technology in our cars. It needs to be stored inside so it's not getting ruined by the weather. And also you don't have to go out and warm up your car because it's sitting in the garage. So we have a fitness room, which is good for officers and their mental well-being as well as their physical well-being. Our equipment, our duty belts, uniforms, body cameras, all good strengths that we have. And then our vehicles, the vehicles themselves, as well as our computers in there. We just got 12 new AEDs in all the cars, our cameras, and everything embodied in the vehicles there. And lastly on there, we felt a great strength was a new firearms range. For those that you don't know, in the past, our only range we had was in the basement of the Boys and Girls Club, and we're kind of limited to what we could do down there and ammo we could shoot in there, and times we could use that. And then we did have an outdoor range that was way out in the county, and that was kind of a hassle to go and qualify out there. So we're very, very fortunate. We've already used it and done a lot of advanced training out there, and of course firearms is a high liability area for us. So we felt that that was a major strength for us.
And just remember, this is just the highlights. There's a big long list of all our strengths at the police department.
The whole document itself is about 21 pages in length. So like I said, there's quite a bit more in there. Our weaknesses we wrote up here, our reserve officer program. Currently we have up there, we have 6 reserve officers. We would like to have more. It's a very important program to our department and to the community. If you're not aware of that, we have volunteers. They come in and they serve as a police officer. They're 100% volunteer. They do 100 hours of initial training, and then they're required to do 96 hours of volunteer work throughout the year. And so that's a pretty big commitment. We're going to look at going forward to promoting that program and hopefully getting some good applicants to fulfill the rest of those open positions there. We know the temporary evidence lockers in the evidence room, we have a shortage of those, and that gets to be potentially a chain of custody issue. If we have some evidence we bring in and we want to just temporarily store it while we go do something else, we need to make sure that we have the areas to do that. The other part is some of our canine vehicles were purchased with the drug control fund money, which was no cost to the city, and those state funds are currently not as readily available as they have been in the past. So one weakness we have going forward is trying to budget ahead of time for new canine vehicles and being able to afford that. And lastly, on our weakness, we've been looking into getting the external vest carriers. And if you can imagine what it's like walking around with 20-some pounds of gear around your waist for X amount of years and 12 hours a day, it takes its toll on your back. And so that's something we've been looking at doing, is getting the external vest carriers to shift some of that weight off of their waistline. So we're looking into that, and we've tried a few things. We're going to see where that will take us in the future. And Tim will take care of our human resources highlights here.
Yeah, I took the best one because this really is what makes up the police department. Most leadership fails not because of competency, but because of character. So it's important that our officers are intrinsically motivated, that they're doing the job for the right reasons. And so this is one of the most surprising things in our department for the last 10 years. We've had really low people leaving, high retention rate. We recently did an engagement survey, in February, we attended the retreat out at Joy's Ranch and learned about employee engagement and conducted an employee survey of engagement, and we scored really, really high. So we have highly motivated officers that are doing the job for the right reason. You know, the wage matrix and the study got us to adequate and fair wages. That's great. That's great for recruiting, but that doesn't keep good character officers, good morals. So we're really proud of the human resource branch of our part of our SWOT. But if anybody has any questions and need a copy of the SWOT analysis, we provided one already to everybody. So we'll just go real quick through the strengths. Like I said, we have a high level of retention with the average age of a Watertown police officer being 31 years old. So they're mature, and the morale is very high. Like I said, we did that study, and it showed that we have highly engaged employees. I did speak about the wages. The EAP has been a really good program for us that gives our officers the ability to reach out for help, not only them but their family, whether it's financial or mental health or whatever. It really shows our employees that we care about them, and in turn they provide a high quality of service to our community. And succession planning is very important to us. We are training people at every level within our department. For the last several months, I've been meeting with our corporals and sergeants with leadership training, preparing them for the future, and we're set up really, really well for the future. Some of our weaknesses is our recruiting process. We've seen a lower number of applicants. People could say it's because of the negative attention, or it could have been because of the wages. But since that wage study and since we got adequate and fair wages, the numbers have gone up. This last go around, we've had quite a few certified law enforcement officers wanting to leave their agencies and come work for the Watertown Police Department. Currently, we have no mental health officer assigned, and we were at 1.6 officers per 1,000, which is well below the national average in the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police recommendation. But thankfully, to the COPS grant and to the support of the council and the mayor, we were able to retain 3 officers based on the COPS grant, and that's really going to help us accomplish our mission. That mental health officer is one of those officers, and what that officer will be doing is really focusing on the mental health issues in our community, people that are in crisis, and really thinking about innovative ways to address those issues without having to place anybody in jail or things like that. So thank you for your support on that. Yeah.
Tim, let's put in perspective, that 3, what does that change that 1.6 to? Do you know?
Yep, it points us to just a little over 1.8 officers, okay, which is pretty average with towns our size in South Dakota. So we're right there. We're set up for many years to come. So we do appreciate the community support on that.
All right, I guess I'm up with technology. So looking at technology piece here, basically it's how do we take the data and information that we're getting and put into some sort of useful manner which officers and us can use to achieve what we want to achieve with our goals and mission. We looked at our strengths, and all our patrol cars have new MDTs. When I first started, there was no such thing as computers in the cars, and we had 8mm handy cams on the dash. And so we've come a long ways, and the computers in the cars, we don't just check Facebook while we're sitting out in the road. We actually do a lot of things out there. And it's very vital to how effective we are and how efficient we are at our job. We write our reports out there. We label our videos from our body cameras. There's a safety issue with all the cars are GPS monitored, so dispatch can see where we're at, and they can pick the officer that's closest to the incident location and send them. So it makes us more efficient there. We write warrants and send them to the judges right from our car. Officers do training on there, and so it's a very, very great resource that we have, and we have new ones in the cars, so that's great. On the body-worn cameras and dashboard cameras, I can speak kind of over time when I was taking calls and patrol, having those cameras there, it's just such a valuable resource for evidence that's captured when you're going out and you're making that contact and doing those investigations. The evidence gathered is great for prosecution to make sure that those need to be held accountable or being held accountable for what they've done. And on top of that, helps the officers see what's happened there. And then from a supervisor standpoint, when I was a sergeant on patrol, what we do is we have our supervisors review body camera footage just randomly from each officer every month. And it's a great piece because it allows a supervisor to look and see what's going on and how they're treating people and how they're doing their investigations. Yep.
Steve, is that body camera directly linked to that computer? Does it upload as you go, or do you have to manually go in and do that?
There's an app where they wirelessly, kind of Bluetooth, I think, or Wi-Fi connects it, so they can go in there and they can watch it, what's already recorded on there, and then they can label the videos. At the end of the shift, they take the camera and they plug it into a bank of cameras, and it uploads all the videos then to us cloud service that we have.
Okay, yep, sorry to interrupt, just
That's fine.
more of a question.
So the supervisors can watch those things. If there's a training issue, they can speak with the officer about it, and I know I've worked on that over the years, and that's a great tool for us. Another part that we use that for is internal investigations, or if there's a use of force issue, it's great. I can log on there. I do all our internal investigations, and I can log on there. If someone says this officer was rude to me, or this officer said or did this, I can log right on there and watch the video and see what's happened or not happened, and make sure that we're doing the best job possible for the community that we're serving. And so that's a huge resource to us. The last piece on there, we were part of a grant this last year. If you didn't hear, we got 12 new AEDs for all of our squad cars, and they're the latest, greatest technology, and they're in all the marked units. And we did have some older AEDs, and what that allowed us to do was take those older ones and repurpose them to some of our vehicles in our fleet for detectives and command staff. And then we have some other ones too. If you didn't hear, we repurposed to Park and Rec, and they were using throughout their facilities in the community. Weaknesses, I'll let Assistant Chief Toomey talk here about this forensic computer, because he knows far more about that than I do.
As you know, I was a ICAC investigator for many years, and digital evidence is a part of every case nowadays. The amount of work that these forensic machines do are incredible. Every time there's a crime, there's some sort of digital evidence, whether it's a thumb drive, a phone, or a computer. So these are overworked, and so ours is aging and starting to fail. We're working with the ICAC task force to try and get those replaced. It's about an $8,000 machine. So that's one of our weaknesses, is keeping that thing up and running. And we're working with our partners, our DCI partners, to see if we can get a grant to get that replaced.
And then the second piece you see there, the FirstNet capable, and what that means is if for some reason the cellular system goes down and we lose all connectivity there, the FirstNet, they can come up here with a vehicle and they can provide a service to us, so that first responders has the ability to still keep doing the business we're doing with the service that we need through Wi-Fi and cellular devices there. And the neat part about that was about a $10,000 process there. We actually, since we did this SWOT analysis, we've gotten all those in the vehicles now. So we got all these cradle points, they're called, in the squad cars, and that was part of the COVID grant that the department had received. So that was all grant funded. We have all those in all the vehicles now. So we listed it as a significant weakness, but that has since been fixed. So that is.
And I can't thank the IT department here at the city enough. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do it without them. We didn't mention them in the technology branch, but they've been incredible to work for and or work with, and for sometimes. Spencer, you work for him sometimes. But he's been great, the whole department. Pete, thank you for all your work.
Next up is our cultural frame of reference. And basically that's just everything. What is the culture when you come into an organization? What are your beliefs? What are your values? What are the rituals, stories? How, when a new officer comes into a police department, whatever we're doing at that present time is what they become. That's who they are. So we look at culturally, what is our culture, and what are our strengths and weaknesses as it relates to that. And we looked at our strengths on there.
This is where most departments fail.
And the neat part about Watertown is when officers come here, they really get a sense that we are a part of a community, and we really, our strengths we put up there, you can see we have Camp Chance, National Night Out, our DASH events, and like Assistant Chief Toomey said, in this whole analysis, there's a laundry list of all sorts of strengths and some weaknesses we have in there too, but these are just some of the things we put up there. So when officers come on board, they see that not only are you a Watertown police officer, but you're part of the community as well. And then we also make sure and recognize our employees through Job Well Done letters and our awards banquet, and then we do an employee spotlight as well that we started doing on Facebook. So they really get a sense of community when they come to work for the Watertown Police Department.
And I would encourage anybody out there in the public, if you want a look at the police department, please sign up to do a ride-along. You'll be completely surprised. The council knows, but we do much more than the average person believes or knows.
And then our weaknesses, we figured that what we could improve on is just improving the culture and working to show officers what they're capable of doing and what they can do and what they can work towards, whether that's they want to be a training officer, a detective, corporal, rotating more officers out in and out of some of those assignments so that they can get a feeling of what the whole department is like. And then that ends our weaknesses there. Moving on to political. And political, what that talks about, you can read that up there. It's not only internally, you got internal struggles for power and resources within your own agency, but also looking at what are the internal and external power holders and stakeholders within the community and the organization. Our strengths that we listed there, we feel that we have a strong relationship with the rest of the Watertown city government, and that's whether it's us telling the street department a light's burnt out somewhere, they need help moving cars somewhere so they can repave a lot or plow the snow, park and rec, maybe work with them to trim a tree so that the intersection's clear so someone can see, or maybe giving them some AEDs to use. The fire department, we go on all sorts of calls with them, and maybe it's just going out to the airport and talking to Todd and see if there's any concerns out there. So we feel we have a really good, strong working relationship with all the other city government entities here. And talking about relationships, we have a very strong relationship with all the area law enforcement agencies as well. I know we reach out to them if we're doing training at the police department. I have an email group. I send it out to all the area agencies, all the surrounding counties. They can come in and attend that training with us, even an in-house training that we're doing. We have multiple DCI agents within our building across the street there, and also a BIA agent that is there as well. So we have a very good working relationship with them, as well as the local highway patrol, sheriff's office, and game fish and parks. And then our command staff members. I tried to look at this. I'd be here for about an hour if I listed off all the organizations and civic groups that we're a part of. Some of them, just to name a few: Vet Court, South Dakota 911 Board, Rotary Human Rights Committee, Kiwanis, Salvation Army, Beacon Center, and the list goes on. And Tim said I had to limit this to 45 minutes. So weaknesses. One thing we figured we could work on is getting alerts out to the public and getting those things out there, and maybe using Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, things like that. Just seeing what we can do to get that information out to the city and people that need that information. Then the last one there is, of course, getting more officers involved in what city government is and seeing what that process is, whether it's coming to something like this, a city council meeting, or just meeting with council members and seeing what the issues are going on in the community. The last two pieces we have are the external things that we looked at, are opportunities and threats. And that's just looking to the future and trying to forecast what are our opportunities and what are our threats out there. And as you look at the opportunities section here, we have a lot of grants that we participate in. I never knew exactly how many until I took over the Captain Remmer's position, and I realized how fun it was writing grants. But we got that COPS grant there too. That was a joke. It's not that fun. But anyway, we got the COPS grant, and that's a great thing for the community, the funding from the federal government to hire more officers to target things that we feel are important. Highway safety grants, we get overtime for speed enforcement, and we get equipment, speed boards that you see displayed around town when you hit your brakes, when you see those, or just keep going the speed limit like you were. We have lots of those. Homeland Security grants, we have to upgrade all our portable radios, and we're getting grants through there to buy those. We've gotten drones and all sorts of things. So lots of opportunities out there for grants. We're looking at updating the downtown camera system, and then of course increasing our social media presence on there as well. Then we looked at our threats, and one of the biggest ones we came away from this is the public perception of law enforcement and making sure. Now, we feel in Watertown here we have a great working relationship with the community and all the community policing programs that we're a part of. And, with all the negative attention in society today as it relates to law enforcement, we feel it's going to be very vital for us to continue working on those relationships and being involved in the community. And again, keeping that culture piece really prevalent within our department so we can keep being as successful as we are. And then the last one on there, of course, with all the technology, prices go up and up and up. There was not much price tags with an 8mm Handycam, but there is with storing all of our digital videos. It's a great resource, and it's something we desperately need to keep. But of course, it's a potential threat with the rising costs associated with all that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we have a highly motivated police force. Watertown is fortunate; it didn't happen overnight. It's a daily job to keep everybody safe, and they're engaged in the community. It's incredible. I can't say how proud I am of our officers, men and women. We have a highly diverse police department that is engaged in the community. So,
So the conclusion, looking at this, it was a great process to be a part of. Can't thank everyone enough that helped us with this. Again, looking at the last ones that we did, it's neat to see all the weaknesses we had that we've now turned into strengths. And so I look forward to doing another one in a couple of years as we end this roadmap that we've now drawn, and we look to the future when we do one again to see that we've fixed all these weaknesses that we identified. And then as you see on there, I'd like to thank everyone. You can see probably some of your names up there that participated in this. It was great having some outside ideas and thoughts, so we're not just all of us internally looking and trying to see what we need. We had a lot of outside resources come in from Adam Lallum, Reed Helene, Glenn Vilhauer, Jason Hansen, Daryl Stacy, and Spencer Tennick. A lot of great ideas. We appreciate everyone taking your time out of your days to come and help with this very, very important endeavor that we worked on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions, Council? Councilman Lallum?
On those AEDs, is there a lifespan on those, I would assume?
Yes, they're about 8 years, and then we got to start looking at them. Some of it depends on, some of them are longer. If the ones that I know we gave to Park and Rec, we looked at the FDA has a list of approved AEDs that can still be used, and so just a matter of whether or not they provide support for them. So,
Yeah, okay, that was kind of my question on that. Is that typically done through a grant program to replace those?
to replace the ones we have, no,
Yeah.
typically it's not. So when I started, we had 2 AEDs when we first got them, and they were in cars A and cars D, so we knew where they were, and we just had 2. And then as time moved on and we got, put them in the budget, eventually we had them in every car. But some of them were starting to show their age, and this was a Helmsley Trust Foundation grant where they give this out to first responders. And so it's really neat. There's they provide instant feedback from the heart rhythm. Once it's used, it connects to the Wi-Fi in the car, and we're working on a program where we could potentially send that initial heart rhythm straight to Prairie Lakes where the doctors could get that before the patient's even there, hopefully.
Yeah, the technology, I'm sure, has changed immensely from the times you guys have started.
Yeah.
But, I remember selling 8mm to police departments. So appreciate them too. But, it's amazing that, and I think with the turmoil that you have with law enforcement and that public opinion, I think, the body cams and things like that have become more and more popular and more, frankly, in your guys' position, it's more of a requirement, not only just to protect the public, but to protect you guys as well. So thank you guys for all you do as well. I know that SWOT analysis is time consuming, but I think it's something that's very, very well done. And once it's through, it kind of gives you a roadmap of where to go for the next few years. So kudos to you and your crew for going through that.
Anyone else? All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I have to circle back. We took a vote on the authorization to sign the TSP agreement, but I didn't get a motion and a second. I have a motion by Lallum.
Second.
Second by Hoyer. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item B is application for a special retail malt beverage and wine license to the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce from 6 p.m. Thursday, August 20, 2020 until 9 p.m. on Thursday, August 20, 2020 for Thursday Night Live. And I'll look for a motion and second for that. A motion by Bueller and a second by Helene. And I'll just say we're going to move the Thursday Night Live down to Broadway, and that's this Thursday. Johnny Holmes Band will be in town. That's a fantastic band. Everybody come. It's going to be a good time. We'll be celebrating the opening of the lofts at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing at this time and see if anyone is here to speak about this item. If so, please come forward and state your name. See no one, I'll close the public hearing and go to council discussion. Oh, Councilman Roby.
I'll be recusing myself from this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Any other? Councilman Hoyer?
Mayor, I'll also be recusing myself from this.
Okay. Thank you. We have 2 recusals. Anyone else? We'll have some votes. We got plenty of votes. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item C is annexation and zoning of a portion of the Dakota Commons subdivision. The first item is approval of resolution number 20-33, initiating annexation of a tract of land contiguous to the city of Watertown, South Dakota. Is there a motion for that? Yes, they're separate actions. Have a motion by Helene and a second by Lallam. And I'll ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first action of two for the annexation and zoning of what's known as the Dakota Commons area, and a portion of that the developer wishes to annex and zone as a continuation of their subdivision out on the Dakota Commons area. It is approximately a little under 22 acres that we'd be looking at annexing that the developer hopes to continue to develop. And we did a first reading for the zoning at the last meeting. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission on their July 23rd meeting by a vote of 6-0. I do have a map for reference, the context of where we're talking about that I'll share. I have two different maps here I'll pull up. The first being the rezone area, the annexation area. Here is this hatched boundary as seen on the screen. That's proposed to be annexed and zoned. Again, the subsequent action will be the zoning, which would be a PUD, but the first action here simply relates to the annexation resolution to approve this area to be annexed into the city. This is in conformance with the comprehensive land use plan, and staff recommend approval to the City Council.
All right, thank you. Is this area affected by the consent decree for water service?
I don't know if Brandy is online or urban planner. I don't know if you know Brandy or Matt even, if you're aware whether that's in that.
I'm on here. This is Brandy, and it is not within the territory.
Okay, very good. Just want to check that box.
Thank you, Brandy.
Don't want to miss anybody.
Yep.
All right. Council, any questions or comments? Councilman Hoyer?
So I know we kind of talked about it a little bit last time, looking at the area, how the sidewalks were going to perform. I see in the proposal that we're still going to push with no front sidewalks in the boulevards and just have the back ones.
That hasn't been addressed yet. This is just the annexation and zoning.
Okay.
And then the preliminary plan will address
Perfect.
that.
I'll hold it. Okay.
Good thought, though. Anyone else? All right, this vote is on the annexation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, the second part of this is the second reading of ordinance number 20-29, establishing the zoning designation of PUD, planned unit development. I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Lallam. And it's the same area, so Heath, do you have anything to add about the zoning part of it?
Nothing further than reference to the map. Again, you'll see in the shaded pink area, this is the existing PUD zoned area of the previous phases of the subdivision, and that would be continued again into this hatched area and subsequent phases of development.
Right, and we recently adopted a different PUD zoning regulation, so I think this is the first PUD that will be addressing this way, which is a little bit different from the way we've done it in the past, where we actually have a preliminary plan instead of just a PUD plan that comes before the zoning. So it's after the zoning now. So any questions from the council? Councilman Lallam?
It says on there the facts there, and this might just be a typographical error there, that to the east it's planned unit development. Wouldn't that be to the west of what we're annexing?
Correct.
Planned unit development?
Yes, that's
the
correct.
east should be A1 Ag.
Yeah, you'll see the zoning designations on this map should be accurate for what's annexed and zoned currently.
Versus the facts portion of the document.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Just more for clarification. I didn't remember doing a PUD to the east.
I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about this? If so, please come forward. Not seeing anyone, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any other council discussion?
This is Brandy again. If I could add something.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know, with this being, since we changed our PUD plan for choosing that zoning designation, we do have on there though that they've attached their PUD plan where they do say that they are not wanting, they want narrower streets and doing the recreational trails in the rear yards instead of having the sidewalk adjacent to the streets. So, and we will have the preliminary plan still after that, but I think that it might not be a bad discussion to get council's take on what they think about the sidewalks at this point.
And to Brandy's point, if I could expand on that, I think where Brandy's going with this, the reason being of summoning some council input here, because of how this process has changed with the PUD zoning, once this is approved by council, there is a chance there's no further action that the council would see before them. That preliminary plan that we receive would go to the Planning Commission for approval. If the subsequent platting of that land is in conformance with that preliminary plan, those two can be administratively performed, those plats can. And so this might be the last chance we hear input from the council on things such as the sidewalk and whether the rear yard continuation of a sidewalk arrangement like that is appropriate, whether there's sidewalk concerns on certain rights of way or certain street extensions that we would want to focus on in the preliminary planning process. And this is the first PUD that we've taken through since amending that PUD ordinance. This might be a talking point too, where we want to look back and see whether that's how we want to leave it, because this could be the last time the council sees that.
That's an excellent point. In the past, the PUD zoning included the plan. The plan was already done, and that was incorporated into the zoning. When we took that out, we took the council's power away to make a determination of whether or not they approved the zoning, because the zoning had all that wrapped up. Now that's a separate thing that only gets approved by the Plan Commission. So, yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. And so that being the case, Councilman Hoyer, what do you say about the sidewalks?
Okay, so page 85 into 86, it's the supplemental provisions to the engineering design standards. I find it just kind of troublesome. We kind of talked about it a little bit last time, but like, where do we enforce our standards and actually stick to them? Because as this is going right now, even if you look at the way this is potentially going to be platted, that's a very traditional looking street, at least to my eyes. I don't see why we wouldn't enforce having sidewalks along the boulevards just like the rest of town. I get that the walking trail concept is potentially progressive, but there's no reason you couldn't have both and then still like supply public safety by having a place for people to walk.
Right. So you're looking at the sidewalk as a public safety issue, and they're looking at it as a recreational amenity.
Correct.
Thinking that there's no need for public safety on these narrow streets.
No.
So, Councilman Roby?
You all know where I stand on this issue. I've been complaining about the way we've enforced sidewalks. We just heard it from the gentleman earlier tonight. We have got to start being consistent about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure I like this way that we're doing our PUD plan separate.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
Just for context, one of the goals that we had in changing the ordinance to the way it reads now today was to help the development process, to help minimize the upfront, the heavy lifting that the developers would have to do before getting the PUD zoning approved. And so the old way is a lot of these details would be designed and put into the work that consultants would do for the developer to show the specific street widths, the specific sidewalk configurations, and in a lot of cases, specific design components for the structures going into the PUD zoning area. So we wanted to scale that back and make it a lighter lift up front to get the PUD zoning approved. so that it would help prevent, in some cases, a developer going to a huge expense and design cost for a PUD rezone that may or may not happen. Now, there are some components here I think we're talking about that would be an easy plug-in up front, like sidewalks, specific street widths, things like in this case we just happen to have and know about because of previous phases. So maybe there is some amendments we can make to this. It still makes sense to get the council a certain level of information, but maybe you don't need to know about the type of siding that's going to go on the structure, and you let the planning commission deal with those kinds of decisions. Just some thoughts I'd throw out there for context on why we changed this ordinance, and this is a good discussion as we work through the first implementation of it.
And can I add a couple of things too to that, Heath?
Yeah, Brandy, please.
And if you maybe scroll up to where they actually have what they're proposing, like what will be different. So what we want also when we're approving the zoning is to look at what are the benefits that this PUD provides other than just a conventional zoning district. So then that's where in this summary they laid out what they're proposing and what they think will be the benefit. So the main one that where the concern comes in, they have lesser setbacks where they explain here, and then also on that preliminary plan type of map that Heath had pulled up before, they do show where they want like the R1 type and R2 type designations where they can put the single family homes or the duplexes, but then also differing from the standard setbacks, then they're proposing what you can see there on the screen under setbacks. And then they also, the bullet point that I think is the biggest concern and would warrant discussion would be in lieu of boulevard sidewalks, a walking trail has been and will continue to be installed within the open spaces that abut each lot within Dakota Commons community, which allows for pedestrian movement into and throughout the development. So, and if that was something that the council already knows that they don't see the benefit, I think that we would just want to have some sort of, just add that to the motion, potentially.
I think that would probably be a good idea. I'm a little concerned about the layout of the streets and the connectivity and the roads that, and when you have neighborhoods without collector routes like this one, there is a road that becomes a collector route and it carries a great deal of traffic, much like in Eastwoods where we don't have any collector routes there either. And so 10th Avenue, for instance, becomes the collector route and it's very busy. And just so you know, this is what this is proposing. We don't have a collector route on the within this subdivision. Our comprehensive plan showed one going up in the boundary between, and then we have kind of a sinuous collector route through the quarter section to the east in a preliminary plan. But Brandy, can you comment on the preliminary plan location of collector route in the vicinity of this development?
Yes. So when the major street plan was a part of the comprehensive plan, that was updated. Was that in the last update was 2014? But anyways, we just recently adopted the new comprehensive land use plan here for 2020, and so we do show 28th Street will be farther to the east, as the mayor had alluded to, and then obviously 19th serves as a collector route, and then 3rd Avenue to the north there of this development will, and then but Parkview Trail will extend to the east into the Lakes of Willow Creek development eventually as well. But this is something where kind of all of this east development, so 25th Street should have ran all the way from basically the bypass route on Willow Creek Drive all the way up to 14th Avenue. But since that was lost already with development, there's Eastwoods, Prairie View, and Dakota Commons, where we're trying to reestablish that route. So the most logical way to do that will be 28th to the east. That will go north and south through the Lakes of Willow Creek development.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Brandy, a question for you. I don't recall, is this addition a part of the original plan, the preliminary plan for this development? Do you have that information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, just for the council's information, I don't want to regurgitate all the stuff I did last time on this whole history, but this was designed, it is a PUD. It's a planned unit development. The characteristic of this whole development was meant to be different. And I'll just mention it again. You know, they wanted narrower streets, smaller, more lots in the cul-de-sacs. It was a give and take with the green space. It was a new style of development that we wanted to allow. So thus the sidewalk issue. So it's not where we said, because we had the greenway, we had the walking trails, it was a kind of a give and take to develop this. And as I'd mentioned, there's one of these in Brookings that's been developing over the years. I'm not sure I agree that we don't need sidewalks on that eastern part, but the one thing I would be concerned about, and this is what they came to us the first time with, was the narrower streets, and I don't know what type of curb they're looking at. I looked at that. It's a B66. I don't know if that's a drive over or a standard curb and gutter, but I highly recommend we stay with a standard curb and gutter. So they would have to do cutouts on the lots. But the sidewalk thing, if this was a preliminary plan, it was proposed a long time ago, and I don't know if we need to add sidewalks to this thing the way it's laid out, or if it's something we'd want to consider on those eastern lots. If you look at the outlying lots to the east, they're pretty much in the same boat as the other outlying lots that surround this whole development. You know, so that's something we might want to consider on the outlying lots to have sidewalks.
Right. And to that, Bruce, too, I might just add, so when this was proposed in 2002, I believe, and so they didn't have to necessarily master plan, they master planned the entire area, but now that they're annexing and zoning, and since they're wanting to go with the PUD, at least this is the time where we can reconsider if we haven't liked some things about the development or want some things to change, that this would be the appropriate time to do that.
Well, I wholeheartedly believe that we need to stay with the same street widths as we've got out there currently. And I don't agree with drive over curbs, but I think there needs to be some consideration for sidewalks in the outlying lots that are not adjacent to the greenway.
The number of cul-de-sacs that's a concern for snow removal, and for parking. It's difficult for the neighbors to park. When you have a cul-de-sac, there's all driveway, and you can't get a car in between them in some cases. So I don't know if this is the time, Heath, to comment on that.
Apologize, Mayor. I was making a note there. I didn't catch the first
half.
About
the street layout.
Oh, yes. As far as the street layout goes, when looking at this, again, we've got more information here than what we require for a PUD. But because they've given us this information, we've already began discussions on whether we want to continue with this many types of cul-de-sac configurations. They are a street maintenance consideration that we're trying to minimize as much as possible. They are allowed in our engineering design standards. They're not prohibited, but it is a operational benefit to minimize the number of cul-de-sacs we have in our community because of the snow maintenance, snow removal procedures that we have to go through, and a lot of times end up having to haul out that snow from those cul-de-sac configurations. So that is another point that we were going to get into with the preliminary plan discussion as well, subsequent to the rezone, and approach the developer about.
All right. Any other comments from the council? Councilman Hoyer?
I guess at this point, is there any action that we would look to take tonight on this, or like contingency to it, or is that all going to be covered later on? Because like for me, I don't know that I'm so comfortable going ahead with it and then just ignoring some of those simple safety things. I can accept a skinnier road. You know, I'm not hyped about it, but because we've already developed in that style out here, you know, that might be something we slide on. But like something as simple as sidewalks, especially with the narrower roads, just to keep people off the streets when it comes to like walking or simple things like that, I think becomes more important because there is less room for them on those streets.
I think if we had a clear consensus, which sounds like we may, and I like how Councilman Bueller proposed it, as I believe you can see my pointer here, but I believe these lots here on the easterly side of Lewis and Clark Trail are maybe some of the most highest concern in needing sidewalk, because these other ones do adjoin the green space in the backyards that otherwise have this trail system. I guess if that's a starting point, we could definitely take that back to the developer when we review the preliminary plan and require sidewalk at a minimum on the east side of Lewis and Clark Trail. And if there's other definitive requests, we can take those back to the developer as well.
All right, Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. And I wouldn't exclude the ones to the south. I mean, I think that maybe we might want to consider that as well, the ones that are a little bit away. Those outlying lots just don't have that greenway. They're not connected to the greenway space or any walkways. And I know there might be provisions for some sidewalk areas that would connect to that area. I'm trying to figure all these maps out, looking at them, and I'm not sure I understand them completely. But I would think on those outlying lots. And we fought this thing with the narrow streets. And when you're in a snow country like we are, you start plowing and you get some deep snow and you got nothing, and then it becomes a safety issue. We fought this thing with these folks, and they came back and they did it the way we asked them to do it. I don't think we need to go in that direction. That's my opinion.
Councilman Roby?
I like everything Bruce just said. I'll second that.
So we have a motion, and if you wanted to add the sidewalk into it, that would require an amendment. Bill Hauer made the motion and Lallam seconded it.
The question I've got is, are we changing the rules in midstream now for the developer? I mean, are they relying upon what we had in place or have in place for the PUD ordinance?
No, they haven't done it yet. They've got an old one that's expired, and they haven't done their PUD plan yet. They want to use the same plan that they had before, but this is a time to refresh it. You don't have to give them the same thing that they got before unless you think it's appropriate. This is, it is different though, the way that you aren't going to see the plan anymore. In the past, you saw the plan before you gave the zoning. Now you're giving the zoning before you see the plan. So if you have comments on what you want the plan to look at, this is your opportunity.
Well, if I was the original maker of the motion, I'm not inclined to amend my motion at this point. So I'm not sure where that leaves us procedurally.
With a motion just to approve the plan, or the zoning, and then the staff will do the preliminary plan, but you won't see it. Councilman Lallam?
Just a point of clarification, Heath, do you have the option from a staff level to require where the sidewalks go in? Or no?
Well, per city ordinance, we do. Now, if we're operating under a PUD, prior PUDs that were approved that allowed variances to those city ordinances, that's what we'd be working from, or any direction we receive tonight that would want us to follow the standard city ordinance, which would mean boulevard sidewalk.
I mean, I like the sidewalk behind where people can use it as a trail system. However, that works in areas. It doesn't work everywhere. So in this PUD, it may not work. I mean, is there something going to be in the middle of it? I mean, there's no sidewalk layout out here. I mean, we're going to have a half-hour discussion on sidewalks here, but there's no direction on where it's supposed to go or where they're believing it should go, other than, well, this is what the PUD was, frankly, 20 years ago. I believe the subdivision's probably getting close to that age.
Yeah, and unfortunately to the new process, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, those are the details that the staff and planning commission would iron out.
So, I mean, we have concerns on our end as to where it is, and to Don's point, and to our citizen that was in here earlier, you know, if we're gonna do this, let's do it correctly all the way across. So if that's where we feel that it needs to go, then that's where we feel it needs to go. Whether it was in the past 20 years ago that this is where should have been then, but if they developed the whole thing 20 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the new engineering design standards do indicate where the typical sidewalk location would be, and that is, I believe it's a 6-inch offset from the property line in the front yard, which allows for, it's included in the street section portion of the engineering design standards for the improvements within the right-of-way. And so the standard, yes, we absolutely have one, and it would be to have sidewalk in the right-of-way, offset a certain distance from the front yard property line, and that's what we typically would administer, like in all the recent subdivisions you've seen up in Valley View or Prairie View or some of the Eastwoods phases where you have that sidewalk out in the front. So I can say it has been pretty consistently applied even well before my time on these new subdivisions. It's just you get a certain distance back into our past to where, you know, the reference earlier from a citizen, he's absolutely right. There's some older subdivisions in town that, you know, there wasn't any sidewalk included, and in some phases there were, and other subdivisions it wasn't at all or it was entirely. So, but with the standard we have today is in place, and we have been consistently administering that. This being a PUD, again, that's where the flexibility could come into play to allow those variations from the design standards.
The Plan Commission will have the ultimate authority on how to lay it out. Councilman Rademski?
In this PUD area with these sidewalks that adjoin this bike trail, is that bike trail clear to snow in the wintertime, and are all of those sidewalks clear to snow in the wintertime?
That's a good question, Councilman Rademski. I don't have that information. Brandy, is that a question that's been asked in previous meetings or answered?
So as far as they have an association that I believe, but I can't confirm if they do clear that snow, assuming they do. And then also then it does tie into our city bike trail, and I am not sure if how the Park and Rec department handles that in the winter.
Most of our bike trails that are recreational are not having snow removed. The ones that have a dual function as a sidewalk in the front of between a home and a street, they are removing the snow, or the owner should be removing the snow on those. Again, that's the recreation versus the safety purpose of the sidewalk.
Right. So I might just suggest too, so with the summary that Heath had pulled up before, that is an exhibit to their petition to request the annexation and zoning. And I would say that if we just amended that, and if that was included in the motion, that the in lieu of boulevard sidewalk, a walking trail has been, you know, and so on. If we would just say to strike that language and to require boulevard sidewalk, and if then they don't want to go forward with the recreational trail, it is actually kind of at a good point where it does connect to our city trail system over to the east. So then it's not like it's really dead ending. I think there's just one portion that's kind of a dead end right now, but they still would be able to connect over to the rec trail on the east, the city's rec trail. And so if going forward then with this annexation and zoning, if we just said that sidewalk was going to be required and that it wasn't going to be in lieu of the rec trail anymore.
But the councilman that made the motion isn't willing to amend it?
Let's say that we do go ahead and make, that I do amend my motion, and we do pass it that way. Now it goes back to, okay, and suppose the developer does not like that. It goes back to staff and planning commission. Now, where does that leave the developer potentially then? We're getting this is the exact sort of thing that we were trying to avoid with our development group committee that's working. We're getting buried down the weeds on this. And I'm not sure where we are, so I guess if I amend my motion, where does that leave us relative to the developer and the staff and planning commission?
Well, that's an excellent point, Councilman Vilhauer. From a procedural standpoint, we would take this request back through the preliminary plan review process and administer a requirement of boulevard sidewalk. Seeing as how the request has come from the council, I don't know as though the planning commission would object to it, but it does open that discussion too on them being the ultimate approvers of the preliminary plan and whether they would have a differing opinion when it gets to that point in the process. Because subsequent to this, staff will sit down with the developer and review their preliminary plan and then take it to the planning commission for formal approval.
And now we're delaying the whole process for the developer again.
No, because not really. I mean,
No.
It would still go through those processes with or without this sidewalk discussion.
they haven't had that discussion yet. They're gearing up for it. They're using this information.
And the reason why too, I think that it feels like it is more information that usually when somebody proposes to annex and zone with the conventional zoning designation, then it's straightforward. But the PUD, they're proposing what they think is a benefit to the city. So then so this is just like how any annexation and zoning would be brought forward. It just usually wouldn't have this type of detail because they're just going with the conventional district. And then so like any other development too, then it would still go back to the plan commission for the preliminary plan approval.
Councilman Rudemsky?
One thing I'd like to add too is, a month ago we just approved a COPS grant to put 4 more officers on, and that's going to be a substantial cost to the city. And the reason we did that was to keep the safety of the community and the safety of the citizens in the community. Be it we're going to approve a plan to not provide sidewalks in front of houses, so children have to walk in houses to go to the neighbor's house or walk down the street with no sidewalks. I think we need to be, relevant to that also.
Councilman Vilhauer?
To expedite the process here, I'll go ahead and amend my motion to incorporate what Brandy was suggesting, just to keep the process moving forward tonight.
So incorporate requirement for sidewalks in the boulevards?
I think that's what Brandy said.
I don't remember.
Yep.
Okay.
Brandy, it was to strike the language, correct?
Yeah. And then they also discuss it further up there when they're first talking about the Dakota Commons in general. And so then if there was anything that talked about the trail instead of sidewalk and whatnot, that they would just change that. Basically anything in this summary that had the sidewalk or the rec trail in lieu of sidewalk just to be struck.
To Councilman Bueller's point, the way the amended motion would apply to is all these new streets being constructed. Is that the intent, or is it just to maybe do the east and westerly sides of Lewis and Clark Trail, just for clarity? Because there is a difference.
And the resolution doesn't have any of that language that Brandy said to strike. So the resolution is what you're taking action on, unless I'm misinterpreting.
Now, Mayor, she is referring to the, let me go there again. Oops.
You're not approving the notes, though. You're approving the resolution. And the
Correct.
resolution doesn't have any language to strike.
So what Brandy was proposing is it's not necessarily a formal amendment with the function of the action the council's taking, I would agree. But what Brandy's proposing is that we require them to amend this section of their PUD plan.
Okay. Amend the plan.
Yep.
Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you. Just a little more history, a little background on this. This development, there was a preliminary plan. I don't think they had all this platted out like they do now. this is apparently a new preliminary plan, but the whole idea was the characteristic and the layout of this neighborhood. It was set up that way. That's why it was a PUD. Again, I still think should be a provision somewhere down the road for sidewalks on the east and the southern part of this property. But one question I have, and this is for Brandy, is Brandy, what do they have? Have they said anything about rec trails throughout the southern division? I mean, in the backyards, in the greenway, is there a plan for trails? I guess I'm not seeing it on the map.
Right, and I am not sure, just from anything that we have, it shows just what we're looking at here for what they've submitted. And so I'm not sure if they even plan on extending that network. But also they haven't even annexed and zoned that property yet either. So they just might have not included it because it's not within the area that they're looking to develop next.
Okay, thanks. But I think it'd be really important, just make note to self on that one, that we do have a provision for a trail system throughout that back in that green space, just like we do on the north part of this division.
Okay, so we had the councilman amending his motion. Do you second that amendment, Councilman Lallam?
Just like a clarification on your amendment, Glenn, if possible.
I think what I heard Bruce say is sidewalk on the east and south side on the boulevard. That would be my amended motion.
That I will second.
Is this the time then for some sort of, well, the roads was another issue, the width of the roads, and then the other one was a provision for trail system in the green space like they did on the northern part. I think that's important, Glenn, because then we don't have sidewalk provisions for anything inside that new development.
Go ahead. I'm not quite sure what we're all doing now with this, but I would incorporate what you're saying, Bruce. I mean, you seem to make sense on what you're saying.
Well, Glenn, I had a lot of time to work with this back in the day, and it just seems to me, and this is just my thoughts. I mean, you folks may have different ideas, but the characteristic and the way that this whole development was supposed to be is very similar to what has developed in the north. And you can see it's been, 15, 20 years, and you can see how far it's developed. I don't think the Brookings one is completely developed yet, but it's a different style it's a different layout for people that prefer that type of property. But I do, again, I would say that we need a trail system similar to what we have in the northern part. I think that needs to be required throughout the green space in the south. I think Glenn, I would say that sidewalks should be necessary around the perimeter on the south and the east side of that property. And then maintain the road size and don't go with those gutterless curbs. That's
yeah, it's showing B66, which has a 6-inch. It's not rollover curb. Yeah, it's a standard curb. So since that's not part of the resolution, and they're talking about the trails are in there, you're just adding boulevard sidewalks along the lots that don't have that trail access. So, and I think that's clear that you're looking for that. Council, any more discussion? Do you feel ready for action? We have an amended motion.
Sorry,
so I'm
Glenn.
going to take
We still
action
buddies? I hope.
I'm going to ask the city attorney if I need to get an approval just to amend the motion first and then act on the motion. Is that the correct order, Matt?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I like the short answer. All right, all those in favor of amending the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed to amending the motion signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, it's, do we need a roll call vote, please, Kristen?
Okay. Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Pauline, Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Redemke,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Nay.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so we have an amended motion. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Roll call vote, please.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. Albertson,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Pauline, Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Nay.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item D is the first reading of ordinance number 20-30, a zoning text amendment to chapter 21.29 CL Lake Commercial District of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. No action here, but Heath, will you please explain what this is?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This revision to the zoning chapter 21 of city ordinances relates back to the recently created CL Lake Commercial District. As you recall, that's a recently adopted, newly created zoning district. Within that district requirements, there was some language relating to the amount of impervious surface that a CL zone property can have. It limits that area to be 50% of the lot. There was subsequent realization that the term impervious maybe wasn't the best word to be used when the intent was meant to be open space, green space, undeveloped land. Now, the reason that term came into play is that there's a recent subdivision that's utilizing the CL district. Some of their open space includes water, wetlands, slough areas that is not considered impervious, or is not considered pervious, excuse me. So that area could not effectively count towards that open space, that green space that was the original intent of the ordinance. So what this amendment does is helps address that technicality to include language that is more in line with what the intent of the open space perspective was when the ordinance was drafted and adopted. And again, this is first reading, so no action tonight, and we'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Any questions, council? Not seeing any questions. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Item E is approval of the resolution number 20-35, the plat of Valley View Second Edition to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota, and authorization for the mayor to sign the development agreement for the plat of Valley View Second Edition.
So moved.
Have a motion by Holeen, second by Lallam. And Heath, please tell us about this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is the plat for Valley View Second Edition. It also includes the associated development agreement that binds the developer to certain public infrastructure improvement requirements and other requirements that are common for the subdivision and development process within the city. The plat is for the second phase of this subdivision, and I will again share my screen for a map of the area. So here we have 14th Avenue Northwest and Second Street Northwest. Valley View First subdivision includes a lot of what you see here laid out in this lot configurations. The second edition will continue north and is outlined in the council packet to include the extensions of 5th Street, 4th Street, and 3rd Street, and then the addition of 18th Avenue that would tie into 2nd Street Northwest. Again, the plat and the development agreement go hand in hand because of the commitments in the development agreement to install the public infrastructure that otherwise would be required before filing this plat. I know a representative from the developer, Mr. Colin Paulson, is here this evening, the developer being J&J Earthworks, and I'd be glad to help answer any questions, and urban planner Brandy Hanton would as well.
Colin, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess part of this, in the development agreement, I know that there's another action pending tonight. We are disputing a portion of that in the development agreement with this later action. We want to make it well known that we are disputing that, and we're hoping to have further discussions on that. I guess I'm not sure how this works. Maybe it's more of a question for Matt on how this discussion should be had. Obviously, we've talked about our dispute before, but I don't want you guys to approve it assuming that we're not disputing it going forward, because the language is in the development agreement currently.
And just as a point of clarity, Mayor, if I may, the only action tonight, Colin, will be on the approval of the plat and authorizing the mayor to sign the development agreement. There isn't any subsequent action on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
Just for clarity.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have any questions?
I'll let you alone for a while.
Colin, you have sidewalks in here?
Yes, sidewalks will be installed.
Thank you.
The
Councilman
issue
Roby?
that's at hand with the assessment issue, that's not part of this.
No, we're assuming that we will do this with the cost recovery, like we did in the previous actions. In Valley View First Edition, there was a cost recovery that's included in the development agreement that you would be authorizing me to sign. They don't want to pay that, but they paid it on the first edition. Timberland First Edition paid it, and Yurdigan, or I'm not sure what the name of that other plat was, but several other editions have paid it, 3 so far, I believe, and they're wanting to fight that cost recovery element of the development agreement. But that's the motion is to approve it with that in. So if you wanted to remove that and not collect the money, that would require an amended motion or a second motion.
Mayor, if I may, we're just disputing it at this time just because there is no council action. So that's what we want to iron out, that detail, before this is approved as is. That's what I'm saying.
This is the council action tonight. The action is to approve the development agreement, which includes cost recovery for the dollars that the city of Watertown spent improving the road next to this addition, which would normally be the requirement of the subdivider.
Correct.
So,
and I'm not disagreeing with your thought process. I'm just going back to when 5 years ago or 10 years ago when this Second Street went in, there was no action taken at that time for cost recovery. And the council member that has the most history on the council didn't even know about it until we brought it forward. So that's why.
It is recorded, though. We do have record in our minutes. Whether it was recorded at the courthouse, maybe not, but there are citations in the minutes.
Okay. And that's, I guess, we don't have record of those, but our attorney has been looking into it, and without it being recorded at the courthouse, the seller and the buyer of this land were not aware of that, so that's
don't know how he can say that, though, because, I mean, those conversations were had before he bought the land with me, myself, and others. And I know he didn't like it, he didn't agree with it, but the council did act, and he did pay, and just like the other developers did pay as well. So, not sure where you're going.
I'm just relaying what I've been told.
Okay.
So,
Council, do you have Councilman Hoyer?
I guess my question would be then to Matt, are the options for the developer on this go ahead as is or withdraw if they don't want to continue forward with that and then get that reviewed?
Well, the council would be acting tonight on this agreement. Basically, these are the conditions of platting. And if the developer doesn't sign the agreement, then the plat doesn't get filed. And so if the council approves the agreement tonight and there are subsequent discussions with the developer that perhaps amend the agreement in some way, an amended agreement would just have to come back to the council prior to the plat being filed. An amended agreement that the developer agrees to prior to the plat being filed, because until the developer signs the development agreement, the plat doesn't get filed.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
Mayor, could I have one point of clarity? This paragraph I have highlighted here, all public improvements are part of this development agreement, including the sidewalks, water, sewer, streets, all in accordance with the current approved city engineering design standards. And then the aforementioned cost recovery is to the tune of just over $28,000 per this highlighted paragraph that relates to the prior construction of 2nd Street Northwest. I just wanted to point those two things out for the record.
Thank you. Councilman Roby?
Just to be clear, that nothing was recorded at the courthouse, I get that, but the communication was these charges are there.
Correct.
And that's where my boss is disputing that.
Councilman Vilhauer?
But again, Colin, your boss then has the option of not signing the development agreement, so the ball is back in his court at that point. If we pass it tonight, then the ball's back in your boss's court, right?
Correct.
As I understand it.
And I don't want to withdraw this. I think we still want to move forward, at least with the process. We have our resources in place to begin this yet this year, once this goes through. You know, again, I'm not trying to argue the point. I get why it's there. So we're not trying to fight with the city. We're just trying to have the conversation with the city and trying not to do things backwards is what, I mean, that's our goal, is we don't want to keep doing things backwards. 5-10 years down the road, change something that was never recorded or brought forth in front of council.
Mayor,
Councilman Bueller?
common question. Would your boss agree there were costs associated with that? Would he agree that there were, in fact, costs associated with that?
Yes, without doubt, there's cost to a road. And that's where, you know, one of his heartaches too is, did River Ridge pay a portion of that too? And I'm sure they did.
Yes.
It does extend.
Can I tell you about that?
Past
River
that.
Ridge paid for the improvement to full city standard adjacent to their subdivision, plus they improved to rural standard the entire distance with asphalt pavement and ditches from River Ridge down to 14th Avenue North. And that's sunk cost that your boss is not being asked to pay again. The city's eating that part of it as maintenance. But bringing it up to full standard is the curb and gutter. That part is what was to be put on the adjacent property owners when they developed. And the city paid those, fully intending to be paid back for their costs, as is normal. And this is a practice we've been doing for quite some time.
Correct. And I get that, Mayor. I really do, especially being on the engineering side and being with the city for a while. I understand that completely. I'm not trying to argue that. You know, my counterpoint is, if we're doing a development, we're responsible for all improvements made to our development. So just because it was a flagpole development doesn't mean that the surrounding land should be held responsible because they didn't want the development at the time. And now that it is developing, it's an unfortunate consequence, I guess. Again, nothing was recorded at the time. Nothing came up on a title search. And that's why we're here today. That's why we're making this argument again.
And that is, I mean, maybe we'll change our ways going forward, but that's been a practice for decades, and we didn't record those actions against the land, and maybe we should moving forward. But for today, we're doing it the way we've done it in the past, and that's what's before. That's the question to the council, and I think they understand your perspective. Does anyone have any other questions or comments before I take a vote? Yes, we have a motion, I think, by Holeen and a second by Lallam to approve the plat and authorize the mayor to sign the development agreement. Councilman Lallam?
Colin, your employer can always, make some sort of motion back from that. That is their right and privilege as well.
Yeah, and just to let you guys know, the discussion probably isn't over. And maybe nothing comes of that discussion going forward, but we just wanted to avoid communication
Yep.
before this was approved.
Makes fun. That's perfectly within your guys' right.
All right, thank you. I'm going to look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is approval of resolution number 20-36, the plat of Watertown Airport, first subdivision to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota. I have a motion by Holeen and a second by Beaver. Heath, want to tell us about this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a project that's been ongoing for quite some time now, related to a new comprehensive plat of the airport property. This was initiated by a Planning for Compliance Airport Improvement Program grant from the FAA. And the efforts of this project were focusing on the correction of any discrepancies in our airport property legal description. And what that helps do is preserve the airport property boundaries, protect and preserve access by formalizing the property boundary, and also including necessary easements for the roads that go onto and through our airport property. The plat I have here that I can pull up is a very extensive one that we've worked diligently with our consultant, Helms and Associates. Todd Syrie, our airport manager, has been a critical part in this, along with Brandy Hanton, our urban planner. And Helms has done a wonderful job for us. He put a lot of work into this plat. As you can see, here's the overview page of the plat, and it includes the entire boundary of the airport property. What that meant was the Helms and Associates surveyor had to do a lot of records, research, and surveying to go out and establish this plat. And these are all the different subsequent zoomed in areas of the airport property that are included within the plat limits. Some of the main concerns we were trying to address here are the streets that go through airport property were not formally protected in public rights of way. And from an FAA airport property management, that was a huge concern of theirs on the FAA's end. In theory, some airports, if you've got a road running through the airport property, you'd have a toll booth up and collect a fee to use that airport property as a public street for conveyance for the general traffic. Obviously, we're not proposing to go to that extent here, but what we are doing is platting a right-of-way easement over these roadways that are part of the airport property. And as you recall, a subsequent effect to this was our 21st Street pathway, the rec trail that we took out in 2018 and have not been able to construct since then. Reason being is we were waiting for this plat to come forward and get approval from the FAA. And now that we have the appropriate right-of-way easement designation on this plat that covers 21st Street, as you'll see on this sheet, we can now relocate, upon approval, we can now relocate that pathway up out of the ditch, the flow line of the ditch, into higher ground that we were wanting to do. Again, that's a subsidiary effect to this project, but the overall project was one that was funded by grant and a necessity to formalize this airport property boundary.
All right, thank you. Long time in coming. Any questions or comments from the council?
Just real quick one, Heath. When would we resume that construction?
Yes, great question, Councilman Bueller. Our discussions with the contractor, who we still have on the line from our 2018 construction project, they are committed to perform that work yet here this September. I can't recall for sure if it was after Labor Day or after the 15th, but one of those, sometime in September, they'll be commencing with that work.
All right. Anything else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item G is approval of the bullying prevention policy, and I think there are some people here that have been waiting a long time. Thank you for your patience. This is a policy. This isn't an ordinance or resolution. It's not legislation. It's just a policy. So I need a motion and a second for
So moved.
approval, and then we'll talk about it. Motion by Hoyer. Is there
Second.
Second by Manti?
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll just give a little bit of review about why I'm doing this. We do not have a bullying prevention policy in the city, but we have had numerous situations where we could have used one. This policy only applies to the City of Watertown services and the city property and the city employees. This is not a policy for any private person. So the city should be providing services in a respectful and positive environment. And acts of bullying, harassment, and intimidation are an attack on our core values. Thus, we've established this bullying prevention policy. And the city defines bullying in this policy as any severe, pervasive, or persistent act or conduct, whether physical, electronic, or verbal, that may be based on a person's actual or perceived, and then there's a huge list of things that people might be bullied based upon race, color, ethnicity, religion, national origin, sex, age, marital status, personal appearance, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, intellectual ability, familial status, family responsibilities, matriculation, political affiliation, genetic information, disability, source of income, status as a victim of an intrafamily offense, place of residence or business, or any other distinguishing characteristic, or on a person's association with a person or group with any person with any one or more of the actual or perceived foregoing characteristics, and that a person who is perceived to have any of those things could be reasonably predicted, that the bullying could be predicted to place a person in fear of harm, whether physical or otherwise, or could cause a substantial detrimental effect on the person, could interfere with the person's academic performance or school attendance, or interfere with their ability to participate in or benefit from the services, activities, or privileges available to them. So this policy says acts of bullying, including cyberbullying, whether by youth, adults, volunteers, or staff, are prohibited. And it's prohibited on city property, and it's prohibited in any of the programs that the city does elsewhere. So what it says, and this is directed at city employees, city staff, and volunteers who observe an act of bullying during a city-sponsored activity, are expected to take immediate, appropriate steps to intervene. And if the intervention is not successful, then they need to report it to their department head or whoever is supervising the activity. It also says that retaliation against a youth, adult, volunteer, or a staff member who reports the bullying, provides information about acts of bullying, or witnesses an act of bullying is prohibited. So we've heard from quite a few people already that bullying does occur. We heard about, in our community, a young person who was the victim of bullying and later ended their life in our community. This goes on, and so this policy is important and it's needed. And I want to give anyone in the audience that wanted to speak and has been waiting to speak about this the opportunity to. If anyone would like to speak about this at this time, please come forward and state your name in the microphone.
Mayor, first I'd like to raise a point of order. This will not interfere with, no, by all means, people will testify. I just wanted to raise a point of order. This isn't in violation of Robert's rules, but in my year on the council, I have almost never heard you preamble consideration of a policy or anything as you just did. And while that's not necessarily out of order, you have that right. But if you are going to go down this road, when Robert's rules is silent, you have to then create that policy where you will do this either for every bill or every agenda item or none of the agenda items. And that's just kind of common courtesy on how to run a meeting, and that's just for the rules so that we know how the meeting will be conducted. So it's not, and you have the right to overrule me right now, so by all means please do, but I wanted to raise that point of order because you can't just pick and choose what you're going to preamble and testify before we bring testimony just based upon your personal feelings. I know that you're a proponent of this, and I respect that, but I would respectfully ask that you're going down a slope where there will be an issue coming up that you don't like, or that, and are you going to testify before we consider every bill? So just a point of order there.
Okay, and I have to agree with you. I don't normally do this, and so point well taken. But I am doing this because of the pushback that I've received from the council. I put this on the agenda and was asked to remove it. So I did because the council wanted more time. And then I've seen people contacting the council with a boilerplate statement about please do not pass a bullying policy. We don't need one. What we have is already good. I mean, I received those too. And so I think this is controversial, and I'm going to take my mayoral privilege to explain myself why I'm putting this policy forward in this painful way, knowing it's controversial. And I won't do this all the time. I'll only do this when I'm feeling pushback from the council to what I'm trying to do, which is create a safe and welcoming environment in our community. So if I'm not perceiving controversy, I probably won't do this. I'm only doing this because of that. So is there anyone that would like to speak? This is your opportunity if you wish to. Probably that one, yeah, that's good.
Is the green button? Push the button on.
Hi, I'm Julie Gonzer, and I am retired, but I was a high school counselor for Watertown High School. And I worked with students who suffered bullying, suffered name-calling, and I worked with the LGBTQ community in the GSA, which is Gay Straight Alliance, working on trying to bring awareness to the administration of the concerns that these students had. In counseling with those students, very bright students, students who had to pretend to be something that they weren't, were told by their parents, don't go out with someone of the same sex because I will lose my business. Parents who said, just graduate, get out of here, and then you can express yourself the way you want to. And very honestly, that's what the majority of the students said. I hate Watertown. I can't wait to get out of here. People are prejudiced. People call me names, and no one does anything about it. I don't have a right to feel protected or safe. And I always told those students, you need to stay in Watertown. You can go away to college, But you need to stay in Watertown to change this. You need to make our community safe for people who are different or people who choose a different lifestyle. And most of those students have left, and they were very bright students. Many of them you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that they were gay or lesbian or transgender. They hid it, and they worked hard to hide it, and their parents wanted them to. One student who I worked with, I had perceived the counselor as being open and accepting, and she went to the counselor for 2 years. And when she was getting ready to graduate, I said, well, what are you going to do? And she said, you know, my first experience with that counselor, I told her that I was a lesbian. And I got the let's pray the gay away. I never brought it up again. And in my mind as a counselor, I think, how can you really be counseling someone, really have a relationship and expect to change that person when you have those views? I think we have the right to have our own personal beliefs, and I would fight for anyone's right to have their own personal belief. But I think as a council member, you have a right to protect people. You have a right as an elected official to do what's right. And when we have people in our community who are pretending to be roommates, always go to church, but they set so much distance apart from each other, they're not allowed to hold hands in public. They're not allowed to walk in and announce that this is my partner. I think that's sad. I think it's very sad. And I think as council people, you have the right and the duty to protect our citizens, every one of them, whether you agree with their lifestyle or not. You have that duty to protect. And if you don't think, if you can just believe that there's only been one student who has committed suicide because of the bullying, you're fooling yourself. We have many, many students who have attempted. They did not complete the suicide, but they have attempted. We have adults who have attempted because they just couldn't stand the bullying that was happening to them. And so I urge you to really consider this, and I thank you, Sarah, for supporting this. But think outside the box of your own personal conviction or your own religious conviction, and vote for those people in our community who are suffering, the marginalized people. And that's what I would expect from you as council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? All right, council. Would any of you like to speak? Councilman Hoyer?
So stuff like this hits home really close. I'll say why. I was 16 the first time I had a friend take down a bottle of pills, and I was the one that called to get them to the hospital. I was the one who, at 16, drove to the hospital and sat there waiting to make sure that they're okay. 17 was the first time I had a friend successfully kill themselves. And it's not LGBTQ issue. These are just kids with adversity in our community. These are Watertown citizens. And so simple things like this, they're not perfect. They don't fix everything, but they're a step forward to possibly give some protection to some people. I don't think this oversteps, really. I think it's just setting an expectation that we expect you to just conduct yourself in an appropriate manner with other people, and you treat them with dignity and respect, and that's all that we look for from you. I don't think there's anything loaded in this bill if you read it. But yeah, so that is why I think this is paramount in our community to start taking some steps in the right direction, because even though you don't see it all the time, it exists. So just think on that.
Thank you. Councilwoman Manti?
Yes, thank you. I guess that when I look at something like this, and people need to understand too, there was a lot of confusion out there as to who this applies to and what it applies to. And we're asking people to understand that this is something we're doing as a city. This is our city policy for city functions, city events, city hall, city staff. And so that concern that somehow we're going to be imposing this policy on private businesses, private industry, whatever, that's really not the case. I think what I see us doing is leading by example. And I think Michael alluded to that a little bit. And this is an all-encompassing ordinance. I think sometimes we have a tendency, depending on where we're coming from, to get hung up on one particular group of people or another. And when you were reading the bill, you know, or the policy, I should say, there's a lot of things here. And I know that single mothers are discriminated and bullied. I know that people with mental health issues are bullied. So I want people to understand that this is something we're doing. I've always been raised that if I see something that I can do to help somebody, I have an obligation to do that. And I think that's just good, being a good human being. And I'm not saying anybody in here is not being a good human being. That's my own belief system. And so maybe I can't solve all the problems of the country, even though I wish we could right now. I think that I can help make life better in our community for everyone. And everybody who's included in this list of people is somebody's child, there's somebody's parent, there's somebody's brother or sister, there's somebody's best friend or spouse. So we're not just looking at this as sort of this myopic thing. And some of the other issues that were raised in some of the emails and letters that we got or phone calls kept linking things together. And I don't believe that this is intrinsically part of another thing or HRC or any of those type of things. This is an anti-bullying policy for the city, our city staff, city leadership. Being at a city event, people are protected with some degree of bullying prevention in a school or in an organization, Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, whatever. So why shouldn't they be afforded that same protection, if you want, or somebody looking after them at the library or at the wellness center or someplace else that they want to go to be safe in a city function? We owe people that. And like I said, don't go off on like one particular thing. Look at this as a policy as a whole of how we as a city are saying we're going to conduct business, we're going to support our programs, we're going to support everybody. And this is a leading by example. I think that this sets a great example of what a city can do. And then at the same time, hopefully people will follow and say, you know what, the city of Watertown is doing this, so I think we should do this too, because anti-bullying is a really great thing. And that's what I wanted to say, is that this is a policy to do good, not anything else. Please don't try to link it to any secret agenda or national agenda or anything like that. This is a policy to do good. So I guess that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Other council people? Councilman Helene?
Just a question for right now. What is the penalty mechanism or enforcement mechanism? In the language of the bill, it says city staff and volunteers are expected to take immediate appropriate steps, but what if they don't? And also it says bullying is prohibited, but what's the penalty if you bully?
There is no penalty. At this point, this is not suggesting a penalty. This is making a statement. Bullying is prohibited, period. And if you see it, be a good citizen, intervene, and maybe that'll solve it. If it doesn't, you have to report it. It's pretty simple, and it's no teeth. It's a statement, and I think it's important because I don't think this would be controversial if it weren't for the LGBTQ. That hurts me to say that. It hurts me to say that, but none of the other stuff is controversial, but for some reason that is. And I don't think that anybody would think it's okay to bully someone because they're LGBTQ. So why is this controversial? Councilman Roby.
That was an inaccurate statement. I'm going to vote no on this, and I'm going to tell you why. Bullying affects everybody. I don't look at this as one group. It affects everybody. It affects kids. We tend to think kids and we tend to think schools, that kinds of things, but it affects adults. And as somebody who's not a big user of social media, I'm amazed at what goes on in social media. The bullying affects so many people, and I know of instances where there have been consequences to that. So, but the character assassination that takes place on social media is unbelievable to me, and that's why I'm not a really big user of it. The reason why I'm going to vote no is this isn't a piece of legislation, it was said earlier, but it sort of is. When we legislate or we pass policies or ordinances, we have to look at the practical application of that. I agree, there is bullying. I know it's out there and it's terrible. But we are a city that we have to be careful what with the short-term and the long-term effects of something like this. And specifically, the thing I always hear about is the unintended consequences. And the unintended consequences are the way you write this is written here is this is not quite a law, but it kind of looks like that a little bit the way it's written. And I think it exposes our law enforcement. I think it exposes our city employees. There's 4 points I'll make on that. There's enforcement. How does it tie into the educational system? How does it affect city employees? How does it affect our citizens? And again, how all this ties in with South Dakota codified law. I don't even know if law enforcement had any input to this policy. I don't know if there was anybody asked. I've talked with law enforcement. If there's a harassment taking place in this town, I believe they'll be right on it. We have a very good police department here. On the enforcement point in particular, the way this is written is our city employees are now going to become arbiters of what's bullying and what's not. Now, a lot of that's common sense. But are we going to have to provide training to our city employees? I mean, counselors were brought up. Those people are trained. You know, the idea that if we're going to be, every city employee has a responsibility to point out bullying, we're going to have to train them. That in and of itself can bring about a lot of legal issues. But I also want to go back to our law enforcement. I've talked with law enforcement. Our town ain't perfect. We know it. But if anybody has trouble getting harassment, they should contact the police department. I know they'd support them, and I know the council would support that. The problem is this. The unintended consequences of what might come up from this, I think, can defeat the very purpose it's being brought up for. I agree, bullying should not be allowed. We can put a resolution out there that says the city does not support bullying. But when you start putting in language like this about may be based, well, it may not be based. There's so much objective language in there, it defeats the purpose. I talked with the mayor of a city that looked at the same thing. And they did not pass a bullying ordinance because of the enforcement issues that it brings about. What they did do at that city is he created a task force to raise community awareness about bullying. And that mayor told me that was a very successful project. I could certainly support something like that. But this is bordering on an ordinance, the way it's written. I think based upon feedback from not just from citizens I've talked to, but also from attorneys that I've talked to. This creates a lot of issues. I think the unintended consequences that are involved is the reason why I'm going to vote no. This is driven by good intentions. I don't think anybody up here would support bullying. I know they don't. But we have to look at this long term. I think that again, my position is with the unintended consequences I think this could bring about, I'm going to vote no.
Thank you, Councilman Roby. Councilman Holeen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll also be voting no and urge the council members to do likewise. I first want to say nobody up here is in favor of bullying. Nobody wants that. We wish nothing but the best for every citizen of Watertown. But we need to disassociate emotion from legislation or legal documents. And looking at the language of this, I see a lot of problems. First off, I'll take you down to the paragraph after Section 3, where it says city staff and volunteers are expected to take immediate appropriate steps. Any law enforcement person will tell you that if you see an altercation going on, you do not immediately go in. You first step back, ascertain the situation, figure out what's going on, and the best response. Appropriate is also indeterminate. What is appropriate? if someone is threatening physical harm to another person, is it appropriate for that city employee to then grab the person or force them down to the ground? Police officers have extensive training. I have daughters who worked at summer camp, and even they had to go through 3 days of extensive training on what to say and what not to say, what to do, how they could possibly even touch a person if there was an altercation among campers. I don't see any training for city employees or staff or volunteers, and you're talking volunteers, so anybody who works at Thursday Night Live could be a possible issue. I'll take us back to definitions. Let's go to section 2. In section 1, it says bullying may be based on this. Well, it also may not be based on that. Why even have that section in there? It's completely arbitrary as to what one person says. Section 2, can reasonably be predicted to. One person's definition of reasonable is definitely different than another person's definition of reasonable. Because we can't know, none of us know, like I did not know Councilman Hoyer's story, so I fully understand where he's coming from on this. So I now would be reasonably predicted that he is not going to like my vote on this. Prior to him sharing that story, I would not have known that. But according to this policy, I would have been guilty even if I did not know that story. And Councilman Hoyer could have said, I disagree with that. Now, granted, that's not bullying, but this is what could happen. And also, how do you predict something? Because you do not know what a person that you're talking to, you don't know how they're going to react. You don't know their history. You don't know their situation. So with almost all laws, it's an objective violation and it's after the fact. If someone speeds, you clock it, you say you were speeding, and you're fined. In this one, it makes it, it's almost thought police going on, where you are guilty of bullying by not knowing what the person you're talking to may be feeling at that time. I also want to make a really concerning point. The advocates, or the people in favor of this, are saying that this only applies to the city, city staff, and city grounds. Look at section 3.1. Now it does say on the city of Watertown grounds and immediately adjacent property. So if you live across the street from Highland Park, does this cover you? Are you therefore adjacent? If you are at Thursday Night Live, is that city grounds? Or I'll get to that actually later. So at a city-sponsored or related event. And then also look, on and off city grounds. So right there, it is specifically saying that this does apply to places not controlled by the city. It is also saying that it is not at a city event. It can be a related event. What is related event? Is a Chamber of Commerce? Is a ribbon cutting? Is a parade? Is the 4th of July? There's a lot of questions about that. In section 2, at a location or function unrelated to the city. Just look at that. The people who are saying that this only applies to the city, I just urge you to look at the language. It specifically says that this applies to a location or function unrelated to the city. So this will apply to the entire city, to the private businesses. I would even contend possibly private homes, definitely the schools. Every church, every private school would be encompassed under this act. And I don't think that we've vetted it through to go forward with that. Now also look further in that definition, directly or through the use of any electronic devices, including those not owned or leased by the city. Does that mean a private citizen's cell phone? Is that liable? I mean, is that able to be confiscated if it's adjacent? So there's a lot of concerns with that, and part of the reason why I am concerned is I will tell you that in other locations that have adopted this, there have been issues. There have been situations where actual city council people have been blackmailed to resign their seat based upon a Facebook post that they happened to hit like. Now, they can't even prove that the city council person liked the post or just liked the person who made the post, but they were blackmailed to go off of the city council. That person then sued the city and is getting his seat back. But I would say we don't want to go down this road where you're bringing in possible litigation, because if you're forcing the city employees to intervene and administer this policy, you are therefore making the city possibly liable for actions that they do or do not do. I also reached out to law enforcement, retired law enforcement, not people currently on the force, and one retired police officer said that at least a third of the situations in a police car could be classified as bullying under this. So not having law enforcement here to testify would raise a real big red flag for me. There are side effects. One other police officer said that anti-bullying measures like this are actually used to suppress free speech and actually used to bully other people. Mayor, you had said that there is no teeth in this, and it's a statement of belief. I can back that, but if that's your intent, then just make a resolution. And that is what we should be doing here, not this, because this brings it into language. It therefore would only grow. If you just want a resolution saying we do not tolerate bullying and we want it to end, all of us would be on board with that. But that's not what this does.
Yes, well, maybe it's not perfect. The intent is clear. There's really not an enforcement mechanism. So I think you're making a giant mountain out of a molehill. Councilman Philhauer?
I've got a question. Sarah, you draft this. I mean, is Matt, are you still on, and Jelaine, our HR director? I guess would invite your comments relative to this policy.
It's a little bit of an open slate there, Councilman. I'd rather not comment just generally. Do you have a specific question?
No, I mean, were you involved at all in the drafting of this?
No, I was not.
Okay. Jelaine, or I guess probably more appropriate for Jelaine. I mean, this directly deals with city employees, which is your bailiwick, as their HR director. I guess I would ask, what comments you might have as far as positions that our employees might potentially be placed in.
Jelaine, are you still on? She may have stepped away. Okay. I will just say I wrote it. I did share it with all of the department heads, and I did get feedback from Chief McPeak of the police department. They thought it was great. I did not get any pushback whatsoever until I put it on the agenda the first time, just thinking that this is not a big deal at all. This is a bullying policy. Most places have one. We could have used one a few times. I've looked for one in our personnel policy. Does not exist. There are situations of bullying which have occurred between city employees. There's no policy.
Julian's got her hand up, Mayor.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My computer was acting up. Just to kind of answer Councilman Vilhauer, your question that you proposed to Matt, no, I was not involved in the making of this policy. Nor was my input asked. I mean, I think that some of our personnel policy does touch on this. Does it go to the extent of what the mayor is asking? No. I would say that in section F, conduct and behavior expectations, we do talk about rude and unprofessional behavior towards a citizen, customer, coworker, supervisor, vendor, and manager. We also talk about discourteous or disrespectful behavior towards the same, and then threatening, intimidating, or otherwise interfering with the job performance of a coworker, supervisor, vendor, or manager. So that's essentially what our personnel policy manual does state in regards to bullying. However, it doesn't specify the word bullying within that. It just states that we are expected to be courteous and helpful to all citizens, customers, and vendors. So that's my answer to your question.
Thanks, Jelaine.
You bet.
Mayor, if I might.
Councilman Bueller.
Mayor, first of all, I respect the fact that you put the time and effort into this important important topic. I would be way more inclined to see us either make a resolution and or revise our human resources policies if necessary to cover some of these issues. But I think this is very subjective. I think this could really end up to be a he said, she said. I truly feel for what a lot of folks have gone through. I've actually gone through a little of that of myself when I was in grade school. I know how that can feel. I do know how that can feel. But I can't support this. I would prefer to see this as a resolution. When we're putting out a policy and there's no teeth, there's no enforcement capability with it, I just don't think it works out.
You know, there's no enforcement in a lot of our policies, like our social media policy, our, I don't know. I see there's a couple hands up. Councilman Albertson?
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Because I think there's probably other folks wondering the same thing. I'd like to thank Julie for coming up and giving her testimony tonight, but how does this apply? This doesn't apply to school grounds.
No, the school.
A lot of what we talked about.
The school has a policy, though,
Okay.
just like this.
Okay, but.
That's what I used as the
Just so everybody's aware
foundation.
that this does not include school grounds.
True. Councilman Albertson's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I also would like to weigh in on the fact that when I read this policy, and I had many emails that said that it isn't bullying that people want to say that they're against, because we all, including every email that I got, I think said, we do not like bullying. What I heard over and over and over from the emails that I read, and also just my own personal thought, is the unintended consequences of this policy. I think there are so many things that can happen because of this policy that I really don't think it's a good policy for the district school district, but for the community of Watertown to have at this point. And so I'll be voting no on this.
I would like to ask the council members who have all these problems with this policy. I asked you 2 weeks ago to please tell me any issues that you had with this policy, because I intend to put it on the agenda at the next council meeting, which is tonight. And I pulled it off the last one. You wanted time to go through it. How come none of you came to me and told me that you have an issue with the bullying policy when I told you I was planning to present it, and I asked for your input? I also circulated it to the staff. I got zero input. The only thing I heard was positives from the staff. And now you've got all these things, you picked through like you'd studied this. But why didn't you say anything to me beforehand? I'd have been happy to modify it. It looks just like, you can pull up the school district or the Boys and Girls Club policies and read them. They look just like this. I wonder how many problems they've had through the years, in and out of court, I guess. I just do not understand it. I'm trying to make a statement. There's no teeth, because this is just a statement. And if you see bullying, you should step in. And you should say, hey, that's not nice. I'm flabbergasted. Councilman Roby?
I'll first answer your question. We all have a lot to do up here. By the time I got to this item to study for it and do my due diligence, it was late in the week. I spent time on it this weekend. I spent most of today on it. Part of the problem with city council issues is I talk to usually 8, 9, 10 people on every issue that comes up. I want different perspectives. And sometimes you can't get people to return your call that day. It takes time to do due diligence. And this is one where I did it over the weekend, and most of today, I probably spent 6 hours on this today alone, trying to get back with people, trying to get people to return my calls. So that's my answer to your question, Sarah. Secondly, I want to reiterate something I said. Everybody dislikes and detests bullying. The very people that this could help, the way you put a policy that's loose like this and something does happen, it can get turned and can actually hurt those people because there's a lot of ambiguities onto it. Documentation supports that. But when you put a policy like this in place, you're at risk of hurting those it's intended to help.
I would also like to answer the question. We are a part-time governing body up here. We all are, by definition, a part-time legislative or government body is reactionary. We all have jobs, we all have families, we all have lives outside of this. We don't have time to go and start crafting legislation. We are by definition reactionary. When a problem is up in the city of Watertown, it's brought to the city council and we try to resolve it. In this regard, you are the one bringing these policies and we are reacting to them. Every time you have brought one, we have reacted in a way that you say is surprising. This is now the third time. And I think the reaction you're getting from us is pretty consistent. So I understand that you're flabbergasted and I understand where you're coming from, but we are by definition reactionary. Something happens, we react to it. We look at it at that point. So you brought this policy forward and we're reacting to it. And I think after 3 or 4 times now that we've discussed this same overall issue, I respectfully say that I think the point of being flabbergasted might be past.
Councilman Rademski?
To Don's point, last night I looked at my emails, and I was caught up on my emails last night. I left my day job at 2:30 today, went home, showered, ate, came up here. By the time I got up here, it was 10 to 4. Opened my emails, and I had, after noon today, they were all sent after noon today. I had 45 emails on this to go through in 10 minutes to read them as fast as I could and respond to them as fast as I could. There's nobody that favors bullying. And the thing of it is, we need to look at this, and this all starts at home. The way your children are raised, what you instill in them for values. I have a daughter that shares rent with another gal in town. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. She's the light of my life. She's part native. And her little buddy, who she's going to marry, is African American. You talk to both of those kids. She doesn't know he's black. And he doesn't know that she's a white little 4-year-old girl that's part native. They've grown up in an environment where they respect each other's values, and that's how they're raised. You know, and I don't think it's fair to put this council under the pressure to pass this when a lot of this needs to start at home with the way these children and kids are raised to respect each other's values and who they are as an individual.
This is how it starts, by making a statement. Councilman Hoyer?
I guess for me, just looking at this, the way we've been going about it lately, I mean, for me at least, it puts bitter taste in my mouth just because I don't know why we're not collaborating and just trying to find a better way to phrase some of this stuff if we have issues with it. If we keep saying that bullying is a negative thing, we all have feelings about it, which I think we all have agreed that we are not, pro-bullying. Great. I just fear that a lot of this stuff we're playing a lot of lip service to lately. And if we want to take steps on it, let's make a resolution then. Let's do that. Let's do something collaborative and actually make a policy that makes sense, or make a resolution that makes sense. But as of right now, it seems like we get revved up and really emotional about, I mean, it felt like defensive stuff here, that we're talking about these emails. I got these emails too. They were literally a copy and paste message that was sent by like 20 people, same message essentially with minor tweaks to it, but it was copy and paste. There wasn't too much to digest there. And it didn't really address anything specific in this policy. It was just like very broad. I could read it.
Our laws are adequate is what?
Essentially, but like the issue that I'm having here is it's great that we can stand and say what our values are, but take action on them. If we have a stand against bullying, then let's come up with something. If we want to do a task force to do that and like make some of this a little more bulletproof and the language better, then let's do that. But just to like put things in the mud and then leave them there doesn't really help us out. And yeah, maybe this should have made it onto Matt's desk and gotten looked over better. Jelaine should be involved in this too, probably. But then let's take those steps and let's do it. I mean, there doesn't have to be finger pointing. We can easily do this and be transparent about what we're doing and then present that. And if we find that our laws are adequate, then we'll show that. But if we feel like they're not, then let's make up the shortcomings. I sit here too. I don't, I voted to put this on just with, motioning, just because to me, it felt simple. It looks like every policy that I've ever seen on it, speaking from a federal background too, it looks a lot like our policy as well. But if we feel like it's not ironclad and we need to define it better, then let's do that. Or make it real simple and just a blanket statement if that's what it takes. But squabbling about it or getting defensive about it isn't going to get something passed or not passed. So if we want to take steps forward, then I would ask that maybe we take some steps to create that.
Thank you. Councilman Albertson, your hand's up. Is that a remnant?
All right, I just didn't put it down, sorry.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything before we take action? Councilman Lallam?
I had just a couple of questions here. What is considered, who is considered city staff and volunteers? I mean, is it people directly employed by the city of Watertown?
Yeah, we name our volunteers.
Okay. What's considered city grounds? I mean, are we talking city-owned properties?
Yeah, city
parks?
property. Anything city owns.
So city of Watertown, anything that says city of Watertown?
Yep.
Okay. And then, why would they go to the department head, not HR?
The department head can go to HR, but if you're at the library and you're the children's librarian and you witness 2 children bullying another child, you should intervene and say, hey kids, don't do that. And if it ends up a tussle and they leave and you didn't get it resolved, you go to the librarian and you say, you're my boss. I intervened and it was not successful. If it was successful, you just go on your day. You don't have to go to HR.
I'm just trying to think, there's HR has requirements that they have to follow that, as far as.
Let's not read more into this.
All right then.
I mean,
never mind.
it's.
I will stop my questioning. Feel free.
Mayor.
I'd like to call the question.
Yeah. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Yeah, we have a. Oh.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by, was it Rademski? And a second by Lallam to call the question. All those in favor signify. Okay. Roll call vote, please. Kristen?
Okay. Albertson?
No.
This is for call to question.
Oh, no. This is just to call a question. Yeah. Right? Actually, we need a 2/3 vote to pass the call. Okay.
This is for call the question.
Oh, then you can do a voice vote.
Okay. Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Lallam?
Aye.
Manti?
Aye.
Rademski?
Aye.
Roby?
Aye.
Vilhauer?
Aye.
Y?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the bullying prevention policy, and I will do a roll call vote here. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Albertson?
Nay.
Bueller?
Nay.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Helene?
No.
Lallam?
No.
Rademski?
No.
No. Manti?
Yes.
Okay, Rademski, what was your vote?
No.
Okay, Roby?
No.
Billhauer?
No.
Y?
Aye.
Motion fails.
All right, moving along. I think, does anybody need a break?
Can we, I request a
let's-
5-minute break, please?
We'll take a 5-minute break. I don't think there's any support for any kind of policy. I mean, I would too. I mean, do you want to sit on the policy, on the committee?
Well, they make one, okay, I wrote that one.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Are we good, Pete? Okay. Okay. Item H is approval of loan modification agreement pertaining to an outstanding city loan made to Craig Development LLC and Craig Holdings LLC, and providing for an extension of the maturity date and an extension fee.
So moved.
Have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Holeen. City Attorney Matt Roby, will you please tell us about this one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Council, what you have in front of you here is what the agenda item states, is a loan modification agreement. The council entered into a loan agreement with Craig Development LLC and Craig Holdings LLC as co-borrowers. Last year, that loan was due August 1st of this year. Jesse Craig is the agent for those two entities, and he's requested an extension of that loan. And this loan agreement would provide for that extension. It would create a due date, a new maturity date of May 1st, 2021. In exchange for the extension of that loan, this agreement calls for an extension fee that amounts to a rate of 3% per year on the outstanding loan balance of $850,000, which amounts to $2,125 payment per month for the next 9 months, with the entire amount due in full on or before May 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have some questions on the council or comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
Kristen, just put in perspective, what kind of interest rate do we typically get in our money that's not committed to anything in particular?
Just on our cash, is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah.
Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at under about 0.5% right now.
Okay, and this would be 3%. And also, yep. Matt, if I'm not mistaken, this still guaranteed that there's a personal guarantee by Jesse Craig on this loan. Is that correct?
Correct. There's a personal guarantee and a mortgage. Part of this agreement calls for the signing of another personal guarantee, just acknowledging this new payment requirement of the extension fee. So that would be contingent. That would be his signing. That would be a contingency of the effectiveness of this agreement.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Mayor, if I might.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you. This is for Chris. Now, I'm just curious what effects this would have on the budgeting that we've done for the year. Is that going to be an issue? And then do we have any kind of a guarantee for the future for that date, that we're going to get that money on that date? Or is it possible that Jesse would come back and ask us for another date? I mean, you can't probably speak for Jesse. I see he's here, so.
I was going to suggest that I believe Jesse might be in the room, so if he would be allowed to speak.
Yeah, a lot of this became about because of the COVID-19 and the pushing of the project for the Palace Apartments. So there's a lot of discussions and meetings in regards to the possible new city hall going in that location. Of course, because of the pandemic, that all got pushed down the road. So this isn't lack of effort. We've got 4 different designs for the site. I already bought the land for the Generations on First to move the senior citizen center. So all those things are in motion. This is just a matter of, and I'm going to ask you guys down the road here, probably put some parameters on a decision by the city as to whether that's a go or not on the Palace site for a new city hall. If that's not a go, then I can proceed, but we've been kind of in limbo back and forth a little bit on those plans. So that's why this extension.
So you're fairly confident in that date for repayment?
Yeah, as far as, probably right after the first of the year, I need to have a decision as to what's going to happen on that site. If the city's in or out. If they're out, then I have four different plans I could put on that Palace site.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kristen, on the budget, is that going to have any ramifications on the way our budget's put together?
No, that is just kind of with it being the cash, it's more of the loan. So we've already kind of had that out of the budget, so it won't affect the 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments from the council? All right, well, look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, and for the record, I believe that Councilwoman Manti is no longer online. Beth, if you're still connected, say something, but I think you've checked out. Okay. Item I is approval of the second addendum to the Lofts LLC development agreement, providing for city reimbursement of stormwater drainage costs. I have a motion by Holeen, second by Lallam. And Matt, will you take this one too?
Yes, Mayor. This came about as a result of ongoing discussions with Jesse Craig, the Lofts LLC. Jesse Craig is the acting agent for that entity in regards to the recently completed or about to be completed development downtown. And prior to this, the city had agreed to language providing for a reimbursement to the Lofts LLC for some utility costs. And one of the missing pieces of that original agreement was a reimbursement for stormwater drainage utility costs. And through some discussions and discussions with the members of the council as well, it was determined that they'd be amenable to providing for a reimbursement for those stormwater utility costs. I've also added a line in here since we are amending this to provide for a not to exceed amount for all the total reimbursement to the Lofts LLC for utilities. And I've got some last minute information here from Heath that the number I had in mind to suggest tonight may have changed. So I would maybe defer to him and Jesse if they're both privy to that information.
All right. Council, any comments or questions? Or Jesse, do you want to speak? Any questions, Council?
Matt had sent that information earlier. I think Heath, you saw it also, or it came from you.
Yeah, and I
pretty comfortable in that.
I could speak to Matt's point there, and actually I'll show my screen here that gives an estimate of the overall cost, just for context again, on how we've working on tracking the commitments here for the city. This spreadsheet, let me zoom in a little bit. What's the shortcut keystroke?
Or just control roll.
That's what I thought. Neither of which are working. There we go. So this is a spreadsheet for the utility service line connections that were part of the development agreement. Matt's estimate included a little bit of cushion down here and was originally coming prepared tonight for a $115,000 maximum amount, which is appropriate. Aside from new information just today, some of the water service line work that the city would also be responsible for include a meter pit that had to be relocated due to our irrigation system service line that would feed the irrigation to the planters. And that would bump this, again, ignore the 106, it should be about 115. And then that would bump that 115. I'm guessing, Jesse, I don't know, did you get an estimate from L&L before they proceeded with that work, or do we know where that will come in at?
We just did time and material on that one because we really didn't know what we were getting into on there. Actually, when he did his suction vac for the soil, saved a lot of time versus trying to excavate the entire thing. But we found that it was, I mean, he worked on it from probably right after lunch until around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So it was not a big job. He's very good at what he does, so it expedited it pretty well.
Okay. I was going to venture to say that Matt's 115 proposed before the new information today could turn into up to 120 if we want a hard not to exceed number in this addendum. I'll quick ramble through these if I see a lot of council staring at this chart. The gas service line, there's $2,200 worth of work done already. There's approximately $1,000 remaining to be invoiced for the gas service line. The electric primary that was relocated in the alley, you remember the discussions related to that. That was not an expense that the city committed to, and so that was paid for by WDC and the developer. The other electric service line installation and electric meter being installed is estimated to be about $5,000 cost, yet to be invoiced. This Medco invoice, I'm not sure, but I think the developer may have covered that expense because of it not being a city utility.
Correct, I did.
So that one you can ignore. The water and sewer service line installations have been estimated by L&L Excavating at just over $7,000. I believe that work is complete now. Is that right, Jesse? Right. So we should be seeing an invoice for that sometime soon. The storm sewer is what Matt just described. It's an extension of the roof drains into the city storm sewer system to help prevent icing and continual roof drain runoff from being on the sidewalks and the curb and gutter. That expense is indicated here and is also deemed part of the service line extensions under the original development agreement. This grade out estimate is simply an engineering office check off from these two numbers. This stems back several months ago when we were debating whether to do all flat work or include the cost of planters in the sidewalk area. And the estimates provided by Jesse and his agents showed that the planters and sidewalk and alley paving were indeed a little less than what engineering estimated to simply do sidewalk and alley paving. So he was able to accomplish that work, the planter work, less than what we estimated, so we deemed it appropriate to incorporate the necessary planters because of the ADA compliance needed in front of the new facility. So again, the grade out number you can ignore. That was just our engineering numbers to check off these numbers for comparison. This total, again, doesn't include the cushion between his estimates and our estimates, which is about $6,000, which would bring this closer to that 115 mark that Matt had mentioned. And then if we wanted to include $3,000 to $5,000 in there for today's utility work that was brought up, that's where I would see that 120 being appropriate. It just so happens to match the budget amount that I've been working with to try to keep this within because of the funds that we are allocating towards this project, which come from the 2020-212 fund that was reserved for downtown alley improvements.
Okay, so the number you were suggesting that we write in is 120?
That'd be correct.
All right. Council, do you have questions or comments? None? Okay. I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item J is approval of public utility easement on city-owned downtown property abutting the recently vacated portion of alley lying between East Kemp Avenue and First Avenue Northeast. I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Lallam. And Matt, do you want to talk about this one, please?
Yes, Mayor. So recently the council took action to vacate the alleyway roughly adjacent to the south there of County Fair. And the action next on the agenda is contemplating conveying the city's portion of that vacated alleyway to the Watertown Development Company. And as a result of that, the utility service providers that had previously been using the alley for their lines will need to be moved. And so what you have in front of you here is a public utility easement document that will be filed at the Register of Deeds. That'll show a portion of the city's property there to be retained in easement to be used for utility service providers in perpetuity.
All right, thank you. Let's see. We do not have them. Oh, I do, okay. Any questions? Everybody's familiar with this easement. We just did the vacation. So no questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item K is approval of real estate purchase agreement between the city and Watertown Development Company pertaining to the city's portion of a recently vacated alley. Motion by Lallam, second by Holleen. And Matt, you're on again. Tell us about this one, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, the council recently acted to vacate the alley south, or portion of the alley south of County Fair. And what this real estate purchase agreement provides is that pursuant to statute allowing us to convey property for economic development purposes, we would convey the city's portion, which would be the easterly portion of that vacated alleyway. We would convey that, the city's portion, to the Watertown Development Company, assuming they accept this purchase agreement. And then they would subsequently convey that strip to Parkside Place LLC for economic development purposes.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Council? Councilman Vilhauer?
Matt, I got to ask a question because somebody posed a question to me today via email. Are there any issues with the city conveying that to WDC for the nominal sum of it? I mean, $1, without going through any kind of formal appraisal process or anything of that nature?
There are no legal issues with that conveyance. The statute allows municipalities to convey property to nonprofit economic development corporations to be used for economic development purposes.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Good to know. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item L is authorization for the mayor to sign the assignment of agreement and consent to assignment of subrecipient agreement 81690 with the state to Community Transit of Watertown and Sisseton, Inc. Motion by Holleen. Second by Lallam. Okay, I'll take this one. The city had an agreement with the state for creating what we call the bus barn, where Watertown, the Community Transit of Watertown and Sisseton, Inc. operates, and they need, in order to have control to operate and receive the funds to do what they're doing, they needed to be in control. So the way that the state would like to do that is to have the city sign over our obligations and benefits to the transit, and then it'll be between them. Right now it's between the state and us, and we're kind of in the middle for helping them. So the state gave this agreement to the transit to get the city to approve so that they can move forward. I hope that's clear. Reading the agreement, it took me like 10 times reading it to understand what it was trying to say, but basically just so they can do their thing with what is really the property they use. Still going to be city property, though. Any questions? Yeah, everybody's brain dead. Okay, I'm going to look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Right, we already did M, so moving on to N. Review of the continued necessity of resolution number 20-15 declaring an emergency concerning the pandemic outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and providing for responsive measures related to the operations of the city and the protection of public health. And our resolution actually says that we'll bring this back every time, and we do. And we can change it if we like. So does anybody have any desire to make a motion to change anything?
Can I
Councilman
make a comment?
Bueller?
May
Sure.
I make a comment?
Absolutely.
You know, I haven't been involved lately with, in fact, I haven't for quite some time with Unified Command. What is their stance on our situation today? And one of the reasons I'm asking that is because I am the liaison to the Park and Rec Board. And we had 3 phases that we put together of how we were going to come back and what we do. Now, a lot of the things that we did, for example, in phase 3, allowed for a lot of softball tournaments, baseball. I think there may be still some fast pitch stuff down the road, baseball, I don't know. But I would like to hear if anybody on the council has any ideas of what we might need to modify, because we can go back to phase 2, and I can't give you all the details on what phase 3 is versus phase 2, but you know, obviously we've had exponential growth on this thing, but I just don't know if anybody has any comments or ideas on how we move forward with Park and Rec. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, as a unified commander, I can tell you that we met last week and we did discuss the status, and the healthcare community still feels like everything is very manageable. The numbers in our hospital beds is kind of the critical thing that we're looking at, and it hasn't been spiraling out of control, even though we actually do have our numbers are going up fairly quickly. We have 50 active in Cottington County. This is a new high for us. And we have 115 active cases in our region, also another high. I mean, we previously peaked on July 5th, and then we came down, and now we're going back up. But we still aren't hearing any even yellow flags yet that we're needing to do anything differently. But the unified commanders will get together periodically, and if there is starting to get that sense that we need to do something, you would hear it. And it just hasn't happened yet.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Vilhauer?
You're right. I mean, the group met last Monday, but the numbers have changed quite a bit in the last week now. Have you had any contact with any of the medical providers? I mean, especially the hospital. I mean, are they still okay as far as their capacity? I mean,
yeah. And I'm going to hear it the minute they start feeling uncomfortable.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe I'll hear it tomorrow, but I did not hear it today.
Okay. And there is a media briefing Wednesday afternoon?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was Thursday.
Okay.
At 3. Thursday at 3. Luckily, we have the PIO sitting right there. So, no desire to change anything. Oh, Beth is back. For the record, Councilwoman Mantee is online.
Thanks. I was trying to watch and then I missed the last couple seconds. If somebody could indulge me to fill me in for a minute.
We're talking about the resolution of necessity for the emergency resolution, basically, whether we need to make any changes. And we're just watching and seeing if changes are needed. And
okay, great.
Maybe, you know, our numbers are going up pretty quickly and things could change very quickly, but I have not heard from the healthcare community that we need to make a change at this point. But it's good to bring this back.
Thanks, Mayor. And Beth, and I don't know if you heard it, but I brought it up as a liaison for the Park and Rec to see what direction we might want to consider if we wanted to go back to phase 2 on how we've opened things up, or phase 1 even for that matter. But, you know, we're going to have to really keep close tabs on this thing, especially with school back in session with LATI,
right.
that kind of thing. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I that's the point I would make too, that this could change quickly one way or the other. So.
Yep. Thank you. So not seeing any motions to change anything. So I'm going to move on to old business. Is there any old business? Councilman,
It's been a long time ago, but earlier in the meeting, we had a gentleman speak on the 10th Avenue project concerns. What is the plans? I mean, are we going to be allowing a forum or having the discussion amongst ourselves at that point yet? I guess I'm looking at Heath or the mayor, one or the other.
well, we're still having the meetings with the council, or with the property owners and the staff, and when they finish those meetings, I expect that they'll compile the information and we'll be sharing it with the council, and we'll have some discussions and go, decide what action to take. But I think we need to wait until they're done with that. Did you want to add anything, Heath?
Yeah, that was it. That was the expectation on our part, and the plan moving forward was we'd compile all the individual comments from our one-on-one meetings with the landowners and bring them forward for discussion with recommendations from staff too on how to maybe appease some of the concerns that the residents have brought to us at a subsequent Public Works Committee meeting. Our one-on-one meetings, I know we've got a handful left to hold, and we'll likely run into next week. So that might be, I'm hopeful we can get that to the council by the first meeting in September for the Public Works Committee, but that'll be pending how we finalize the one-on-one meetings.
Thanks, Heath.
Councilman Lallam?
I just wanted to piggyback on Glenn's comments there. You said next week they're hoping to have those done, or within the next week or week and a half, roughly?
Yeah, next week to 2 weeks.
Okay. I know we've been getting a lot of feedback, especially I would assume Mr. Rademski and myself.
It's a public process, and I think that people often get discouraged and impatient with the public process, but we got to let it work its way out.
And I was just going to state, I mean, I'm more than open to any email that they send me or call me. I mean, that's why we're here, is to be able to, tell them. I know that staff is still working through, all the different situations, and I would assume that they'll keep us informed, so there's no concrete way that we're going with this as of right now, so.
Absolutely, still in the information collecting phases based on the initial design proposals.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Bueller?
Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to thank you folks for taking the initiative to do that. I think that's a great plan. I think it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out, but it would be nice if we could get that information prior to the Public Works meeting, the Finance, Public Works, Safety.
Great point, Councilman Bueller, and thank you for that. I'll pass the accolades on to staff as well. Appreciate that.
Councilman Hoyer?
I move to take from the table the resolution on the ratification of LGBTQ plus liaison appointments.
Okay, we have a motion to remove.
I'll second that.
A motion by Hoyer and a second by Manti to take from the table the liaison appointments. Would you like to expound on the reason?
Expound on it. We just tabled it last time. We've had some time to digest and kind of look at everything that was there around it. We know that the current liaison, who is already attached to the City of Watertown Police Department, has continued to do her duties. This is just putting someone in place here for the City of Watertown just to act as a liaison and a voice that is of understanding with that community so that they can have representation like everyone else, to speak freely and just have a voice that can hear in a sympathetic way to their experience and guide them to an appropriate channel, whether that be a department or elsewhere for where they would need to go.
Thank you. I saw repeated misinformation from a whole bunch of people that thought it was a liaison appointment to the council. So I don't know where the boilerplate got wrong or who provided the boilerplate, but the liaison is to the mayor's office. That's me. And the liaison is not a faster route to me. It's a more sinuous route to me. So anybody can come to me directly. I'm open. I meet with anybody who wants to meet with me. Having a liaison is for someone who is afraid of what might happen if their conversation reveals something about themselves that could make them vulnerable for danger in some way. So that's another one that really was a head scratcher for me, that it was tabled. And I know you think there's a big agenda. That's what you said, but
Point of order. The motion is to take it off the table. The only appropriate conversation would be about that motion, not
Okay.
about the liaison appointments in general.
Sorry, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Mayor, if I might.
We need to, is there discussion allowed on the motion?
No, there's not a motion, there's not discussion allowed on a motion to take from the table.
Okay.
But
Sorry about that. So I'll take action. All those in favor of taking the item off the table signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Okay, Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
No, excuse me.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Helene,
No.
Lallam,
No.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
No.
Roby,
No.
Billhauer,
No.
Y,
Aye.
Motion fails.
motion fails.
Okay, still on the table. Is there, let's see, where are we? Old business. Any other old business? Any new business? We have the discussion of First Avenue North, or First Avenue Southeast, and pedestrians that Councilman Hoyer and who was the other council, was it Roby? That wanted this on. And for the record, I'm not opposed to this. I would have put this on the agenda, and if it slumbered in my email too long, I apologize. Michael, do you want to lead this?
On the line that can speak to this.
Oh, okay. Is it Liam?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry. I won't belabor anything. Liam Cohane, I know it's the end of a long agenda before. So the only thing that I wanted to say was that I think it would be real helpful to have the four-way stop at Maple and First. That's that intersection right by Cottington County Heritage Museum. Cars are coming real fast from the east towards the west, and you've got a lot of pedestrian traffic crossing First Avenue southeast from north to the south towards to the courthouse. Basically courthouse traffic. I see a lot of near misses. Been a part of one or two myself. And I would also like to explore perhaps maybe a mid-block crosswalk. I know that's unorthodox. I know we don't really do any of those in Watertown, but I would certainly like to explore that. I don't know if this is a council matter or if this is just, if we can do this administratively through or public works type stuff.
Let me see if he's, did you want to say anything else, Liam? I know Councilman Lallam has a question for you.
Well, I would say that generally we've done a really good job downtown. The crosswalks, the four-way stops have been well received and well utilized. I spend a lot of time downtown, obviously. There's a lot of pedestrians and it's good to see. But I've noticed a few small improvements that we could make. And so in addition to that, I would like to have a greater discussion about maybe some more signage, either in the intersections or immediately adjacent to the intersections, And when I say in the intersections, I mean physically in the roadway. There's signage, if you go to travel around different places, even in our own state, there's different signage that you see, basically that just indicates that it's a state law that you must yield to pedestrians, which it is. And I think that kind of educational stuff will help make it even more safer for people, particularly downtown, but everywhere in crosswalks.
Sure. I think that's a great idea. Councilman Lallam?
Mr. Colhane, when you're talking about a crosswalk in the middle of the street, are you thinking like by the Midway Alley there? Is that what you were thinking?
Yes, either on the east or the west side of the alley or both. I don't pretend to be a traffic engineer. I think traditionally the crosswalks usually are on both sides, but there's just a ton of people that walk, basically come off the alley, because the alley looks directly onto the front of the courthouse.
Right.
So you have a lot of traffic there, and not many people are going to the very ends of the block.
Well, I'm thinking they could do technically a diagonal that goes in line with the diagonal parking that's there. I mean, that's not uncommon when you have a alleyway directly across from the quote-unquote entry spot to the sidewalk there. I mean, they got a spot where they don't have cars that are allowed to park. They could probably diagonal that in that same area across.
Councilman Roby?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman Roby.
This came to Michael then to me, and I thought it'd be good to discuss because we're doing a bump out right down here at the lofts. We just did two-way. We've talked about doing other bump outs. I just think maybe we ought to sit down and get the whole downtown streetscape plan together. I know we've done some things along those, but maybe it's time to clean that up and do that and then see how everything fits together. So I thought it was just a time of discussion.
Sure. Yeah, we already have a streetscape plan, and since we were messing with the sidewalk along Broadway by the lofts, that's why we put the bump out there. It's an opportunity. Councilman Vilhauer?
And it's timely too, because I think just last week or so, I think we all received an email from a downtown business owner that expressed concerns about the traffic and the pedestrians on Kemp Avenue as well. Very concerned about the safety hazards for pedestrians. So I think it's something that we should be looking at probably in more places than. And then just today, I got an email concerning the same issue around the lake, where there's bike crossings and need better visibility for the bike and walkers out there around the lake in a number of places. So I think it's something that needs attention in a number of areas in town.
Thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
I would echo that. I think a ton of it's been, because I utilize a lot of the bike trails and running trails and stuff, and a lot of it's just better visibility, better signage, especially in those high-speed areas like the lake. But this one specifically across the street from the courthouse, because I live just down the street on 2nd Avenue South, so like I take 2nd Avenue South all the time, and this is like one of the worst blind spots in town for potentially clipping somebody. People come out of the alley because they gun it, because they're just like, well, I can't see, so I'm going to go, and they gun it. So like you learn living down there to take it very slow at that point, but there's a lot of near misses that even I've seen in person. And so it's a contentious little area. I know it's not traditional, but I mean, Councilman Lulham's recommendation of even doing a diagonal there, just something simple, because it's already a goat path. People decided that they were going to cross there. We should probably just understand that they're doing that.
Well, yes and no. I think if we want to look into that, I want to look into a pedestrian signal.
Signal would be even better.
Because people aren't looking for pedestrians mid-block.
Right.
And I don't want to give someone a false impression of safety by painting something on the pavement that a car doesn't even see. And, you want something the car sees.
Right.
So.
I just think with how much, especially that area, the courthouse gets utilized, that's kind of why it's a big safety consideration, because when you go to title your vehicle, a lot of people will park on that side too. But it's definitely, like everyone said, this is a good timely discussion to start talking about simple street safety.
We can sure do that. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Liam. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
All right. Any other new business? Any liaison member reports? Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering, Heath, the airport board I thought was going to recommend putting the fuel farm discussion up on the agenda. Did they not get that done, or did we miss the ball, or did they just decide to put it on a future agenda?
Now that you state that, Councilman, I believe either, if not this meeting, it would be on the next. I know the airport board also has a special meeting here on the 31st in consideration of the bid award for the new airport terminal. But yeah, either Todd or I let that slip through the cracks for this meeting, so I apologize. But we can definitely get it on the next meeting for discussion. The general synopsis is that the tank farm expansion, the fuel farm expansion for the the contractual fueling of private aircraft that was discussed previously. The need has now grown again based on the agreements that the airport has, and us being indicated as a stopover place for fueling for those private aircraft, and that they're going through a capacity of fuel much greater than, and almost to a concerning level that we're not going to have enough to meet our essential air service fueling requirements as well. So long story short is that need has escalated now. We were hoping, not hoping, what we were planning on is the effects of COVID wasn't going to necessitate this improvement yet this year, but it looks like it's almost done the opposite effect because of the amount of private traffic, airline traffic that have utilized our fueling services here in Watertown.
Interesting.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes.
Heath, is this going to require relocation of tanks or additional tanks?
No, it'll be an additional tanks and expansion of the current location.
And I'd just like to say that the airport board does have a plan in place to help pay for at least part of it, I think upwards to half of it, just recognizing that they should, that they're trying to do their part for this. Private aircraft travel is actually up during this COVID. A lot of businesses are going down that route. And as a result, the fuel farm has been taxed quite extensively, and they have a need for this. Watertown is on, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's an app for pilots, basically, and aircraft owners, where they can find out which city and airstrip in the entire country is part of this, and then they can land, and then it's a much easier to fuel up, and they get a better rate, but it's also good for us because then we make some money too. So that's kind of what's going on, and I'll look forward to that at a future agenda.
All right, thank you. Other liaison reports? Councilman Albertson.
Mayor, this goes back, thanks for the time here. This goes back to new business. I had my hand up, but didn't get called there. Heath, I'm just wondering, is there anything can be done about crosswalks? I had a person say that she's been in the crosswalks around the lake and people aren't paying any attention. I don't know, can we put out any public service announcements or anything that say people in crosswalks have the right of way, or is there any signage, or is there anything that can be done to remind people that you know, when you're driving and somebody's in the crosswalk, they're supposed to have the right of way? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Albertson, for that question. And that, of course, stems from the earlier discussion, too. I think that they all kind of tie in together. I have noticed personally, in my professional opinion, that we can see some improvement citywide on some of our pedestrian crossings, let alone the downtown concerns that were expressed here tonight, but also the ones around the lake. I've driven through some of the school zones that I've thought could be better marked and signed appropriately. Some of the things we've utilized in other communities that we've been very successful in building those crossings out to be a lot more robust, a lot more effective with the traffic calming. Our RFB system, which are rapid flash beacons, they're PET activated where they push the button, and then the beacons on the signage are the rapid flashing ones that tend to draw attention to the traffic a lot more so than the slow yellow flashing bulb that used to be from times past effective. But anyway, those kinds of setups and arrangements for crosswalks and rec trail, bike trail crossings and things of that nature, I think would be a very good addition to our traffic network, and something that I can look at focusing on based on comments tonight and trying to determine how to prioritize those and bring some plans forward.
Okay, Councilman Vilhauer.
We still on liaison reports?
Yes.
Just a quick update. You've heard me mention a couple different times about getting together with a contingent from this council as well as utility board. We have a meeting scheduled for Friday the 28th at 1:30 with Councilman Lallam, Holleen, myself, the mayor, Kristen, along with a couple utility board members, their manager, and operations office or office administrator over there. So that meeting will be taking place on the 28th to try to see if we can resolve a few of the issues that we have between us.
Thank you. Any other liaison member reports? Councilwoman Manti?
Actually, mine was related to the other discussion on the trails. I had my hand up for all, but that's okay because it's hard to see those. Heath, also, would you put kind of in a note that bicycle traffic as well, where they cross the roads, it's easy to let the shrubs and the bushes be overgrown to the point where when a bicyclist is traveling a little bit faster than a pedestrian, needs a little bit of lead time to be able to determine whether or not he can speed up or slow down, whether it's, if that's the right term for it. But I can see a couple of them immediately. I could point out to you that the bushes just being trimmed back would make that, as you said, a more robust crossing. And even though there's a lot of signage to the effect, a lot of people will tell you riding the bike just does not mean that you're going to get the traffic to yield to you. So I know walking and biking are two different things in terms of an intersection, but in a sense they're not in terms of the safety. So just kind of add that to your list of, the visibility factor for somebody traveling a little bit faster on a bike.
All right, thank you. Other liaison member reports? Okay, any announcements? Councilman Lallam.
Just a reminder, Lake Area Tech open today and people are in school, so make sure you're paying attention to the speed limit reduction and the amount of traffic that is around that area. So there will be a lot more people.
We're not used to it.
No. And the road on 11th is up and fully
I know.
retarred.
Got
so
that
that's
done.
that's a
Just
big
in
plus.
time. Just in time. Any other announcements? Okay, we do have a need to go into executive session to discuss and consult with legal counsel on contractual matters, pending litigation, and possibly some economic development. And there is a possibility that we will take action upon coming out. So I need a motion to go into executive. Motion by Lallam, second by Holeen. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.